So first things first, start Capture One. My version of Capture One is slightly different than most of yours. I have the studio version of Capture One, which is it's really designed for enterprise. So it's for, the reason I have studio is that's what they have here. That's the computers, the studio computers have this very same version on it. It's one step beyond the Capture One Pro version. It has just a few bells and whistles, nothing that would make it worthwhile. It's extremely expensive. So I just want to reiterate, you guys, just so that you know this, that you can get a 1-year subscription to Capture One for like $63 if you do the educational discount. So in doing the educational discount, you have to pay for the entire year. So it's a subscription, but it's like, again, it's like $7 a month or something like that, but you have to pay for the whole year. So 63 bucks is, again, eventually you guys are going to have to own Capture One. So I'll just throw that out there. If you feel like you're not going to upgrade Capture One from session to session too often, you can buy the version of Capture One. As a matter of fact, here, let's just take a look at this really quickly, because this is important for you guys to realize. So I'm just going to bring it up really fast. It'll be part of the video. So you guys can go here with me. I'm just doing a search for Capture One Pro, and then I'm going to click on Capture One Advanced, click on pricing, say yes, you can have my children. So I'm sorry, what?
I have a question. Mine says your subscription not compare Capture One and the radiation Capture One.
I was just now another shooting earlier and maxed it out.
She can fix that. Oh, she can fix that as well.
I'll just still go.
Yeah, no, she's going to have to come in here and do it. So, guys, you can hang out there. While they're doing all of that, I'm going to go back, because you'll see right here, it's really hard to find. There's no place I see the educational discount part here. So go back out to your search, which is where I'm going to go, and add educational discount to this. And then right here, students save 65% on Capture One. And go ahead, it's going to ask you to verify yourself as a student. And what is the student discount? Click on it. Are you eligible? So you think they would give you a price here. So trust me on this. They give you a price on this. And like I say, it's under $70 for the year. I'm not a rep for them. I don't sell this stuff, whatever, but this is something that you are likely going to be working with the rest of your life. Yes? Yes, so that's what I was going. I'm going to go back to the normal pricing. So you'll see on the normal pricing, they do two different things right here. They do the Pro subscription, and then they do the Pro license. So the Pro license is $317, and when you pay for that, you own it. You own everything that came before this. So every version of Capture One up to 23 is the version that exists right now. That's the most recent version. When you pay this, if you pay this $317, you get version 23, and you also get all the ones before it. Not that anybody really uses the ones before it, but just so that you know, it applies to all of those. So every year or so, Capture One does a major update. The next update they do, when they go to 24, your license here will not cover that. But the question you have to ask yourself is that what am I really getting out of that? Do I need the latest, greatest in that? What they're doing a lot now is they're adding a whole lot of AI to Capture One. So for instance, in the studio version that I use in Capture One, in the focus tool, you can actually set it up to track somebody's eyeballs. So it will continue to track and show so in the screen where you're checking focus, people are moving around, it will completely continue to move that. It will track people as they're moving around in your set. And so show you that focus. It's a nice feature, but do I need it? No. So here's the deal. If your version right now, there is, I think the only educational discount is the subscription model. So if you think, okay, I'm just going to round it up to $70 a year. So it's $70 a year. You would have to go 5 years before you reach that $317, or basically 4.5 years. That's how far you would have to go. So the question you have to ask yourself is that, am I going to want to keep this for the next 4.5 years, the version that I've actually got, and before I upgrade again? And again, in an educational pricing setup, they've made it so cheap. I would argue that you're just better off doing the subscription part. It's cheaper, and you have the most current software the entire time. The minute there's an upgrade with your subscription, you get upgraded. So you stay current. Again, so I don't know how you save money by buying it, is I guess what I'm really trying to say. If you're not on an educational discount, then it's more than twice the price. And so you're going to get there in 2 years instead of 4. So it's a different calculation, but just keep that part in mind. Some people, I've got a really good friend, he's still working on version 6 of Capture One. It's 15 years old. And he finally upgraded it. And I was like, well, if you were good for 15 years, I'd go ahead and spend the $317 and get another 15 years out of it, but then he'll be dead. So, right? Anyway, I'm just saying, again, guys, I'm not trying to sell software here or whatever, but yeah, anyway. This is the de facto software that every professional photographer uses. Every professional studio uses this. Nobody uses Lightroom. Nobody uses anything other than this. It's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Okay, so with that being said, I'm going to jump out of this. Did you guys get Capture One? Malia, is it working now?
Yeah, you just have to connect to the Wi-Fi.
Okay. I'm sorry, what?
You just have to connect to the Wi-Fi.
Oh, good to know. Good to know. Good to know. Okay, so I'm opening up Capture One. We're just going to start this from the very beginning, from the get-go. So I am going to create a brand new session. So again, up at the very top, this is one of the most important things that people fuck up. The way that these computers are set up is when you launch Capture One, it automatically defaults to trying to establish a catalog for you. You don't want to work in catalogs. Catalogs are very much like Lightroom. They are designed to hold every photograph you take for the rest of your life. And if you are a lone single artist and you are just shooting your work, then the catalog has advantages because all of your work goes in there. But if you are working for anyone else, again, if you are working for multiple clients, if you're working for multiple photographers, you never want to have all your stuff put together. If I shoot for Neiman Marcus and then the next day I shoot for Saks, I don't want those two together in my single one lone catalog. And there's no advantage of having a catalog over a session if you are going to do a new catalog for every single client. You would never do that. Again, catalogs are really designed as huge databases and for them to be searchable. Nobody wants to work that way. So everyone is going to expect you in a professional situation to be using sessions. No one uses catalogs. Keep that in mind. So to do this, there's two ways that you can do it. You can go to your library. So if we take a look really quick, you guys should know this now, having gone through that whole course. There's the toolbar at the very top. There are tool tabs that run along this edge right here. If my screen is not wide enough, there are two little arrows right here. If you click on those, this will show you the other tool tabs that I have in place. If you hover over the center part of this screen, if you click, you can click and drag and open this up wider, and then you could see the actual ones that you are missing. However, if you do that, your viewer window gets smaller, so probably on a laptop, not something that you want to do. So I'm going to pull mine back here and not worry about that part. But anyway, the ones that we care about and that we're going to go through today are the library, the tether tab. We're not going to deal with shape. We are not going to deal with style. We are going to deal with adjust, and then we will also deal with export. So we're going to blow through. We're not going to spend a ton of time on a lot of this stuff, but that's what we are going to do today. So In the beginning, if you click on this little plus that's right next to this, you can actually come out, you'll get a flyout menu, and you can do either new session or new catalog. You can also do the same thing up here in the file menu, new catalog or new session. You always would want to do new session. A dialog box will open it up, and we are going to use the naming convention that we've been using in this class all along, and the one that you should probably continue to use unless somebody tells you they need something different. So as a digital tech, a lot of times the companies that you're working for will use a completely different naming system. You should take, again, you walk into the studio, you find out, is there a special naming system we want to use today? Or ask the photographer the same thing. If you are the photographer, ask the client, is there a special system, naming system that you want? Because a lot of clients actually, all the shootings that you do, they will all go up to the client server, and then art directors and creative directors all over the country can actually log in and look for images based on that naming convention that they use, not the one that you use. So it's just something to keep in mind. You don't want to actually change this once you've actually made it. As a matter of fact, if you have made a session and you have to change the name of the session, your really smart move is to simply create a new session with the correct name and then move all of your captures into that new session, and you'll be good to go. I'll show you kind of what that looks like in just a second. So at any rate, I'm going to use new session, the naming convention that I use. So it starts with the year 2025. Please type this in with me, 2025. This is March 03. Again, you would want to always use 2 numbers for your month, not a single number. It gets too confusing in terms of what it is. The same thing goes for using 4 numbers for your year. If you just put in 25, nobody knows if that's the 25th day or the 2025. I mean, nobody knows. But if I put it in 2025, everyone will know what it is. 03, and then today is the 7th. So again, 2 digits for that, 07 underscore. Then I use a 3-digit client code. In my case, if I'm shooting for myself, it's VER. If I'm shooting for Saks, it's SAK. If I'm shooting for Neiman's, it's NEI. If I was going to do a wedding, it would be the first 3 letters of the last person's name who was getting married. I mean, it's those kind of things. So I'm actually going to just put in a VER. And then another underscore, and then I'm going to do C1 Pro, P-R-O, demo. And then I'm going to count those letters. C1 Pro DEMO, 7 letters. That's within my 8-letter limit. And that's going to be the name that I actually use. So then the location where we put this, if you click on these little 3 arrows that drop down, you can actually pick where you want to put this. I'm going to put this into my pictures folder. You only want to shoot to certain dedicated folders. Your picture folder is the best place that you can actually send this. You do not want to shoot to your desktop because, again, your desktop is a database that every single time a file goes onto that desktop, the entire database of the desktop, every single file on your desktop has to be recataloged. So it really gets slow. So you've got art directors who are screaming at you, why are your images coming in so slow? It's because you've actually shot to the desktop. You do not want to do that. You also do not want to shoot to an external hard drive because the same problem. You've got to then, every single capture has got to go down that USB cable or that USB 4 cable or whatever, and those cables are incredibly slow relative to the speed of the hard drive that's your internal hard drive of your computer. So you always shoot to your internal hard drive. You've also always got a backup that actually will go out to an external hard drive. I have mine connected at the same time, and I have a program that is automatically copying everything that goes to what I'm doing here to this folder on my internal hard drive to my external. We will talk about backup strategies 4 or 5 classes from now, and I will show you that trick, and it works out really great. It's a smart way of working. But at any rate, do not plan on shooting anything but your internal hard drive, and never, ever, ever shoot to your desktop. So pictures is going to be fine for me. I'm going to go ahead and say choose that. And then down here, we are not going to do templates right now. They showed you how to do those in those videos, so we should be fine. Again, the last piece of advice, and I've given it to you before, I'll give it to you again, do not have this open in a new window. If you have multiple windows that are open in Capture One, which you can do, the problem with it is that your camera can only attach to one of them. And if you don't remember that your camera is attached to window number 1, and you say, okay, yeah, open this in the second window, window number 2, it covers window number 1. One, and all of a sudden you are frustrated because you can't get your camera to connect. The reason is that you screwed it up to begin with by opening it in another open window. So again, camera can only be connected to one window and to one session. So I don't know why they have this. I would never use this. So anyway, I'm going to click OK on that. And this part is somewhat good to go. The very next move, do not do anything until you make this next move. This is, again, this is the order that you should be, let me make sure I'm still recording this. The order that you should be going into without hesitation immediately to your tethered icon. In your tethered icon, you need to change your capture naming system. So again, if you take a look at this, so click on your tethered capture, there's a whole set of panels. A lot of them are collapsed. So you're just looking for the one that says next capture naming. Go ahead and open this up, and you'll see in the format, it's got name with no space in between and then camera counter. You do not want to use a camera counter. So to fix this, you click on the little 3 dots that are just to the right of this. It'll open up the naming format setup window. So in this setup window, you can actually change. You can type directly into this, but you can also use what they call tokens here. So that's what basically the way that we are going to work. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this capture counter. So I'm just going to hit the delete key to get rid of it. I'm then going to put in an underscore so you can type directly into this. So just type in an underscore. And then you're going to scroll down in the token group. So in the tokens, what I'm looking for is destination folder. This is, again, how everyone works. So I'm going to ask you guys to do the same thing. Let me get my screen a little bit brighter here so I can read this. Destination folder name. This is the one you want to find. Click on that icon or the token and drag it up to the top and let go. So now we have name underscore destination folder name. You're going to put in another underscore. And then we're going to go up to the very top of the tokens, and you're going to grab this 1-digit counter token, and you're going to drag that up in its place. And then you're going to click on a drop-down menu, and you're going to come down to 3-digit counter. So you will see a preview that sits right down here of exactly the way your files are going to be named. And again, this 3-digit at the end before you see this IIQ is actually the frame counter. This is also a live counter. If this thing says 006 or something like that, it tells you that Capture One knows that there's 5 files already in your capture folder that have this name, and that it's going to start with frame number 6, in which case you would want to reset your camera counter. I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. But realize that this is not just this is exactly the name that is going to be used for your next capture. This is a live element. It's not just some preview. So at any rate, go ahead and say OK to that. So you can also, if you click on those little 3 buttons again, we should do this. If you click on those next capture naming buttons, the little 3 buttons again, across from the format, you can save this as a preset. User presets are all over Capture One. So if you don't want to have to rebuild this every single time, you could click on this Save User Preset on the lower left-hand corner. It'll bring up a dialog, and you could call this, I'm going to call this Verser's Naming. You don't call it Verser's Naming, call it Your Naming. And hit Save. Then you will have a drop-down menu under these presets up here at the very top. You can see I've got a bunch of them that already have my name on it. Well, not as many. I've got a naming one. Anyway, but it's Verser's Naming right here. And it will simply set this up for you. You don't have to go to all the trouble of typing all that in. So, and sometimes you want to have multiple versions of this. Some people who only shoot to a single folder don't need this destination folder part, but we do for the work that we're going to do here. So anyway, yes. Okay. So that part is set up correctly. I'm going to go back to the library right now. We're just going to talk about a couple of things along the very top that you might want to have, that you might not want to have, things that I have set up that I will actually control. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually start with the preferences. So come up to the Capture One menu at the very top, click on it, and it's settings or preferences. So is anybody in here using Windows with Capture One? So what is yours called? What do they call it? Yours might actually be at the bottom of the edit menu. This is where Windows always puts their preferences.
Oh, yeah.
Is that where it is? And do they call it preferences? Yeah, okay. So for Windows people, it's the edit menu down to preferences. For the Macintosh people, it's the Capture One menu down to settings. We're not going to go through everything in here, but there's a couple of things in here that you need to check and you need to be aware of. So general, I'm going to leave it as it is. Appearance, I'm going to leave that as it is. Image, I'm going to leave this as it is. The capture, so I'm going across the tabs along the very top. The capture one at the very top, this guy matters, and it matters a lot. So it used to be in the days of Capture One, all of us have tethering problems. So one of the solutions for tethering would be to come to this place, and you see where it's got all of these cameras listed with USB above it? Every single one of these cameras has its own flavor of USB. And so it used to be back in the day that these, if you had all of them going at once, they could confuse one another. So one of the solutions to capture problems would be to come in here and turn off every single camera except for the brand that you're using. And it's not a bad strategy. The problem with this is it is sticky. And so if you then shoot and everything's fine today, and then tomorrow you go to another studio and they shoot with Nikon instead of Canon, and you're bringing your rig there, or somebody else has done this, and you don't know that this Nikon has been unchecked, then you will actually not ever be able to connect your Nikon camera. So it's important that you realize that this can happen, and this actually happened in the studio to me. I had a student who's like, I can't connect, and this was the first thing I went to, and everything in this was shut off except for Sony. And they were trying to connect a Canon camera, and you can't do it. So anyway, this part actually matters here. This extension down at the very bottom, this is phases extension, this IIQ. So if you're shooting with a phase back camera, this is what it is. You can change that to TIFF. I don't recommend that because TIFF, we assume, is just a normal file format, something that's already been baked. We don't think of it as a raw file. Technically it is a raw file, but nonetheless. So I'll leave this at IIQ. Then continuing to work our way over here, color you can leave, you don't need to worry about that. In exposure, this matters. In exposure, I change my setting from 255, I drag it down to 250. Why do I do that? Say what? Exactly. So if I'm saying that the maximum exposure for my highlight detail has to fall somewhere between 245 and 250, if I set this at 250, then I can click on my exposure warning and immediately it will show me what is out of range that I need to worry about or that I don't need to worry about. But anyway, that's where I set mine. I also do the same thing. I click on the check mark for enable shadow warning and I crank that up to 15. So what this does is that when you have an image on, and you can see exposure warning is right up here. It's the little triangle outside of this. It's in the toolbar. If you click on that, anything that is above 250 will get flagged as red. Anything that's underneath 15 will get flagged as blue. So it doesn't mean that you shouldn't see any of these colors. It merely means to say that anything that's flagged in red is going to be not have highlight detail, and anything that's flagged in blue is not going to have shadow detail. That's basically what this is all about. I'm going to leave crop alone right now. Well, let's take a look at crop really quickly. This is just how I like to work. When I do cropping, I don't like to see through. I like to lose the image that I'm not going to see. So to get to that, you want to crank the opacity all the way up to 100%. And then some people prefer to have white around their images when they crop. If you do, you crank your brightness all the way up to 100%. If you want a medium gray as your borders around, you put it at 50%. I prefer black, so I keep it at 0. So this is how I have mine set up. Then nobody deals with focus because nobody understands actually how they get this thing done. Just so that you guys realize. Focus, it works great. It'll actually show you what's in focus and what's not, but nobody understands what any of these settings are, just as though, just to throw that part out there. So that's all we need to deal with here in the preferences setup, so we are good to go here. In terms of the toolbar itself, we can modify how the toolbar works, and I'm going to show you a couple things that I would consider doing in this. So for me, what I would consider doing in this, to edit this thing, you hold down you need a right click on this. So if you're in a Macintosh, if you're on a trackpad, you can do a 2-finger swipe down. You can also hold down the control key and click on this. For Windows people, it's a right mouse click. and then just come down to Customize Toolbar. You'll also see you've got options here that'll show you these tools up here, whether they have icon only or a text only. A lot of people who get really familiar with this stuff will go back down to icon only, and you'll see you lose the text descriptions. It's a little bit neater, but when you're first learning this, I would keep them both on. But at any rate, come down to Customize Toolbar, and it'll open up a whole window underneath this, and these are things that you can add or subtract. You can also move stuff around here. So if you see up here on the very top, you see that all the icons at the very top are moving. So, and then there's some things up here, there's spaces up here. Like you'll see there's this little square here that's just blank. All that is a spacer. So these things up here actually matter, and you can move them around, you can change them, you can get rid of them. I personally would get rid of some of these to open up space for stuff that I prefer to use. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this auto adjust. Nobody uses it, and as a matter of fact, in every single one of the parameters that you could use, you can click on them individually. This would be a global auto adjust. I don't use it, so I'm going to click on it and simply pull it out and let go, and it goes away. Now, if you say, "Oh shit, I really love that guy," or your photographer says, "Hey, where's auto adjust? Bring it back." You'll see here's the auto adjust icon right in here. Simply click on it and drag it right back up where it was and let go, and you are just as good as new. So, but anyway, I'm going to get rid of mine. I'm going to show you how to do custom spaces here. So the next one over here is there are befores and afters right here, and there's a couple of spacers right here. I'm going to get rid of these spacers because I don't need just empty space up at the very top. So I'm going to get rid of those guys right here. You'll see then you have a before and after. I really like this. This will show you before and after changes. This grid, for people who are doing architectural work, it just lays a grid out onto your screen. It makes sure that your horizon lines are level and that you're whatever. That's what this is all about. If you don't use this stuff, then you can get rid of it and just open up a little more room up here. I use exposure warning all of the time. I keep it there. There's another little spacer right here that I'm going to get rid of. I'm going to click and drag that to get rid of it. And one of the most important tools that I use, this copy and apply that you see right here, basically what happens is that when you make a change, an adjustment on an image, and you want to apply that to all of your other images, you click on copy, which is the up arrow, and then for all the other images that are selected, you click on the down arrow and it will copy those, it'll paste those adjustments to it. You can do this in a single move instead. To do the single move, you need this tool right here on the upper left-hand side called Copy and Apply. It's a double-headed arrow. I click on that one and I put it right next to these up and down guys because they are incredibly closely related. So the way the copy and apply one works is that you select all of your images, but whatever one that you're going to make an adjustment to is your primary image. It's the one that'll be on the screen that you actually see that'll have the white line, the white border around it. Then any change that you make to that, instead of doing this two-step process, copy and apply, you simply click on the one and it will then copy any adjustments that are made to the primary and apply it to all the secondary ones. It's just a whole lot faster to work with. And then finally what's not on here is my focus mask, and I'm actually going to add that. So I'm going to drag this guy and I'm going to put it up right next to my exposure warning. So this is how I like to have mine set up at the very top. Then again, if you screw this whole thing up and it's just like a nightmare and you're like, oh my God, what did I do? You can always drag at the very bottom. There's this whole setup, this is the default setup. You can drag this whole setup back up on top of this and it'll reset everybody. But I like the way this one works, so I'm going to hit done on that. So then I'm going to change a couple of things in my tooltip. So that's the very top. We're done. I'm going to change a couple of things. Yes?
I just have a question. So is like the default settings toolbar like industry standard or?
Everybody customizes this stuff, but this is when you first open up Capture One and you go to the default workspace, this is what you'll see. Yeah. So anyway, but I'm going to show you how to work around all of those things. Yeah, Aaron.
Is there a way to like create a preset for the toolbar?
To do what?
Create like a preset for the toolbar?
Oh, actually, the resets are right here. So this is, oh, you mean to reset this toolbar?
No, like a preset.
Oh, a preset for the toolbar?
You don't want to go
No, everything that you do, because you need to get the preset dialog box for whatever that preset, that type of preset is. So they make a distinction between presets for like naming and presets for color. They don't put those in the same spot. So there's nothing that'll actually let you do that. Okay. Oh, one other thing that I would put up here that's not up here. So again, I'm going to control click on this toolbar and do customize toolbar. And I'm going to actually, I don't use this share online a lot, but I'm just going to get rid of the spacer that's right next to it. I'm not going to get rid of it, but I'm going to get rid of the spacer next to it. We want rotation in here. So it's not reset, so don't get confused by the circular arrows. Oh, here they are, rotate. So it's 2 arrows like this. I'm going to click on that and bring it up and put it right here in this spot. So what happens with most camera setups, if you are shooting like most normal people shoot, you don't need to worry about rotation. The camera or the camera back has a gyroscope in it, and it knows what down is. So no matter how you're shooting, it will always orient your pictures correctly. And that works fine until you actually tilt your camera and point it straight down. So if you do this, if I'm doing this, again, you won't see this on the video, but if I'm doing this, I'm shooting like this, no matter what I do like this, the camera has a gyroscope and it knows this is down. But the minute I turn my camera like this to shoot down, it doesn't understand down anymore. And so you will end up with pictures completely in the wrong orientation. And if that happens, that's when you want to use these rotate buttons, and they will stick your image into whatever rotation, whatever orientation you actually want with it. So it's just a nice thing to have, and it doesn't take up too much room. So I'm going to be done with this. We're going to go through a couple of these things. I'm just going to show you how I would set them up, and then we'll take a break. Okay. So the next thing along the very top is I need to change the tool tabs that are actually up here. Now, a lot of people, if you click on the Shape Tool tab, this is all about keystoning. So again, if you are a person who wants to change buildings, so if you're shooting a building and you're not using a shift tilt lens and you get convergence, the building gets narrow as it goes to the top, this is where you go in. That's what keystoning is all about. It's where you can square up your images. Most people do not use this tool. So why would you have this tool tab always on your setup here? So I'm going to get rid of this tool tab. To get rid of it, hover over it, and again, this is a right click. Capture One is full of right clicks, or 2-button click, or a control click. It's full of them. So if you hold down your control key and click on this guy, you can remove the shape tool. Now it's going to say, are you sure you want to remove that? And I'm going to say, yes, I want to remove that. Now if you wanted to get it back, that's not a problem. If you click on the little 3 dots on this flyout menu right here, you can actually see that you can add a tool tab, and the shape tool is right here. So you can say, yep, I want to bring it back, and it'll bring it back. And so now it's sitting right over here on the far edge. So let me drag this screen to make it wider. It's sitting right here. If you want to move this tool, I forget the keyboard shortcut, but I think it's the command key allows you, yeah. The command key will allow you to grab, so it'll be control key on Windows. Yeah, you can actually grab this tool tab and you can move it around. So if you prefer, what a lot of people do who are shooting tethered is that they will actually have their library, their tether, then they will bring adjustments over next to it, because adjustments are color and exposure, and then they will bring export next to that. So style and refine and adjustments and shape, all that, you can leave all of those. But this way, when I actually am covering up tool tabs, I don't cover up the ones that I care about. So this would be how I'm going to ask you guys to set yours up. You can always reset this, so you don't need to worry about that part. And then again, I'm going to go back to my library here. When we're going to save this as a custom tool workspace here. And when you have it saved, you want to actually make sure that this is set up the way you ultimately want it. Now, here in the library, I don't change anything, but what you could Liam. Guys, I can't hear a word. I got fucking rock and roll going on out here, so speak up a little. So wait, you're looking for the export tab? Yeah, so again, the little 3 arrows, click right here. Come down to Add Tool tab, and it will be right down at the bottom. And then you can, again, hold down the Control key and move the slider over. I mean, you can do this in any order you want, but this is basically our shooting order. We organize first in the library, we shoot with a camera, we adjust it, and then we export it. And it's just the quickest, easiest to do. Okay. So just realize that a lot of this stuff you can move around and all that kind of stuff. You can customize this the way you want to your little heart's content. That's fine here. We don't need to worry about this. I'm not going to change anything that's actually on this one as well. I like the fact that they finally added metadata to this at the bottom, but realize that all of these are tools. So the library itself, this opening up part, this is a tool. The filters are a tool. The keywords are a tool. The keyword library is a tool, and all of this is, and you can add these to any place that you want them. I think they belong here, so I'm going to leave mine here, but I am going to change some things in my tether capture. So I'm going to click on my tether capture, and in this case, again, depending on how you work, you may or may not need tools here. So right now mine has changed a little bit, so let me, mine's a little bit different than yours, and I don't want to go back to my default settings here. If you want to get back to the default, the way the camera actually ships, come up to your Windows menu at the very top, click on this window part, and come down to Workspace, and you would actually come down to Default Workspace. And that will get you back to where the way everything looked when you first opened it up. I'm not actually going to do that. I'm going to show you about base characteristics in a second because we're going to add it. But for the time being, I'm going to get rid of it. So hang on one second. So I think that's the only real change that I've made on this one. Yeah, okay, so at the very top, do you guys have exposure evaluation? Okay, so if you click that open, it's basically a histogram, that's all it is. I don't use it, I use a color card. So for me, why would I keep this here? I like to free up space here. So again, if you click on the little 3 dots to the right of that, you can say remove the tool, and it's gone. So then I'm going to open up camera. Camera we use all the time. This is where your camera shit shows up. So that one I definitely want to keep. The one underneath it is camera focus. This only works for for phase 1 cameras. Do you have a phase 1 camera? I don't. Well, actually I do, but it's not no, I have a phase 1 back that's on a Hasselblad body. So this does not work on a Hasselblad body. So I'm going to click the little 3 dots and I'm going to remove the tool. I'm going to get rid of it. Camera settings, this matters. This is where you can actually change your camera settings as well. Capture naming, we've already talked about that. Next capture location, you would definitely want to keep that part here. And next capture adjustments, we're going to keep all of that here. And they are all set to their defaults. If they're left at their defaults, you will be fine. We haven't changed any of this. Now, I actually also add the overlay tool here. Do you guys have overlay? Is that in your tether part? Finally, they've moved it. They used to have it over in the always in the either the export or the adjustment tool part, but it's sitting here right now. That part I actually like. That's good. But I'm going to add one more tool here. So to add the next tool here, for me, I hover over the icon that's at the very top. So the thing that says tethered, the tool tab, hold down the control key and click, and we are going to add a tool. And the tool that we are going to add is base characteristics. So when you do that, it used to put these always at the bottom. Now it puts it kind of in the middle at the top, but you can move this anywhere you want. So it's added it right underneath camera for me. And I'm fine with leaving it there. If I really cared about it, I was worried about it, or it was in my way, whatever, again, you can click on this and you can slide this panel down and you'll see it's going to drop under my camera settings right now. Yeah, I prefer to have it there. So you can move all of this stuff around. So either way, that's how I'm going to leave mine for right here. You'll see that on mine, I've got these little studio tags on mine. These are things that actually have been done for that function in the studio version of this, not the pro version of this. So anyway, this thing is now set up the way I like it here. In my adjustments tab right here, I'm actually going to add that same thing again. So in my adjustment tab, up at the very top, I've got a histogram. I never use it. I'm going to click on this and just say remove the tool. Layers and masks are critical. So are style brushes. Match look, I don't use this at all, but I wouldn't get rid of it because it belongs in the color group. White balance I use all the time, but I've also got white balance in my tether setting. So back in my tether setting, when you hook up a camera, you remember you've got that little control for white balance. You also have white balance is sitting right up here in the pick white balance tool at the very top. So that all exists there. So anyway, back in my adjustments tab, that can all stay, that can all stay, exposure can all stay. Do you guys have high dynamic range? Yes? Okay, they used to not have this here, so you can add it here. Levels, curves in the color editor. I'm going to collapse the color editor and see what's under. Color balance. Black and white, clarity, dehaze, vignetting. At this stage of the game, for me, I would also add right around white balance, base characteristics. So even though we've got it in the tether group, you can actually add, this, I could add it to every single tool tab that I have. So again, I'm gonna hover over the adjustments, hold down the control key, click on add tool, and I'm gonna add base characteristics again. And it's going to sit here right under, I don't want this underneath my layers and masks. I'm gonna actually slide this down underneath my white balance. And that's where I'm gonna leave it. Again, if you've got to go in and force an ICC profile, this is where you do it. And that matters when you're doing color. So this part's actually set up for me. Then finally, the last one over here is the export dialog box. You'll also notice that there's an export window up here at the very top. The export window here, the arrow that's up at the very top part, if you click on it, it'll actually open up something that looks like the export tool tab. However, there's an issue with this one, and the problem, some people will call this a feature, some people would call this hand the baby in the crib a hand grenade and pull the pin. This actually has the whole preview of your image, the ICC profile that is used for the preview of your image can get very confusing in this version of export. So I don't use this one. I don't frankly like this one, so I'm going to get rid of that one. I can't get rid of this tab up here. Actually, maybe I can. I'm gonna control click on this and do a customized toolbar and see if I can get rid of export. I can. I'm gonna drag and get rid of that mother. It'll only cause you hurt. Again, you can always put it back if you find out you need it. But I did add the export tab right here. So if you click on this one, it'll open up export recipes you always want at the very top. They have these cross tokens right now. This is a new feature. I don't use them, so I'm gonna just collapse it, but I'm gonna not get rid of it. But all the rest of this matters. All of the rest of this is how you build your recipes. So we can look at this stuff later on and go all the way down here. So this would stay exactly how it is. The other thing that I don't like about that export tool, the tool tab that sits up at the very top, is that you do not get the queue here. So the export queue that is at the very bottom, if you start, this is really an important one, guys, you should write this down. This one especially is a tech going into this. So I'm gonna give you 5 seconds, and then we are through all the tool tab adjustment parts. We're gonna save this and then take a break. So the thing about this, the export queue at the bottom. So when you are processing, it takes an enormous amount of processing power. So because you can process thousands of files. And what a number of art directors will actually do, if you take a look at the export recipes, you can open this thing up, you'll see that there's a bunch of them in here. There's a JPEG and as an sRGB. If I click on that, it will say that I want you to then print everything that I've selected. I want you to print JPEG sRGB. But you don't need to stop there. If you say, well, I also want a TIFF RGB, you can click on that. And then if you say, well, you know, the art director is saying, well, they want a ProPhoto 16-bit one, fine, I'll give them a ProPhoto 16-bit one, whatever. And then, oh, there's the pre-PES people, they need the swap version of it. And so I'm gonna click on this. This is 4 versions of every single file that you are going to do is going to be processed. So if you have 250 files that you're gonna process, it's gonna be 1,000 images. It takes a long time. And the problem that you run into, actually I take that back, I've got this sRGB down here, also click, so I got 5 of them going. If you do this, the problem is that it takes an enormous amount of processing power to do this, and it slows Capture One down. So what happens is that when you load up that 250 images to actually process, and you hit the export button here, you will then get this, all of them will be listed in a queue right here. And in this queue, you can just watch them. They'll go through one at a time to be processed. But then all of a sudden somebody wants to start shooting again. You can click on this stop button and it pauses things. It doesn't stop, it doesn't get rid of it. It just stops the processing part. So what most techs do is this. When somebody's shooting, they are not processing, but the minute somebody stops shooting, they will go back to this queue and start the processing again, so that you're not faced at the end of the day with doing thousands and thousands and thousands of images to process and end up having to stay at the studio all night. You want to process throughout the entire day. So, but you do not want to be processing while somebody is shooting. It's not that Capture One will crash. It won't crash. That's not the problem. It's just that the previews become radically slow. And again, it just frustrates everybody when that happens. Questions about this? Are we good on this part? Okay, last couple things that I'm going to talk about really quick. Up along the very top as we start to work our way across just the very top of the viewer window, I always check on this. It's this little, looks like 4 little icons right here. What this does is it allows you to view multiple images at one time. If you click this off, you can only see a single thumbnail previewed up here in your big viewer window. So I always have this on. These next 2 things that are right next to this, you would only need this for if you're having what they call like a proofing margin. So again, this is all, the only reason that you would have this is for people, how they're going to actually then print your image. So what a proofing margin really is that it shows you exactly, it'll actually shrink your image a little bit so that you know you're really seeing the top and the bottom and the right and the left. So that somehow the image is not bigger than what you think it is in your viewer here. So again, it's really somewhat esoteric. And then this last thing over here is only happens in visibility settings for layer masks. When we get into doing our color work today, we'll actually use these guys. So this is now set up the way I want to. Don't you want to do this every single time you work? No, you don't. So what you do instead is you come up to the window menu and you come down to workspace and you do save workspace. And a window will open up, and you should give this a name that matters. So I know techs who will actually have personal workspaces for processing only, personal workspaces for tethered shooting only, personal workspaces for all of them. You know, again, you can do multiple ones of these. I'm just going to do this as versus workspace, so just a general name. And say save. And it's going to say, workspace already exists. Do you want to replace it? I'm going to say yes. And now, if you come up to that window again, and you come down to workspace, and then come down to default, you'll see that everything changes, and it goes back, and I get my export button back, and I haven't moved all the tools that I moved around. I've got my exposure evaluation is back, my shape thing is back. I don't have the order that I wanted before. I don't have any of that. That's all gone. But if I go back to my window, down to workspace, and come down to Verser workspace at the very bottom, and click on it, I get all that stuff back. Questions? Okay, one last thing to talk about really fast, just so that, because while we're on this, just so that you know, if you go to our Canvas site, and are you guys sick of this 135-year-old collage thing yet?
Yeah.
Hate it. How are you in art school and you do something like that? My mother in her worst could do better than that. Our Canvas site, go to module number 6, which is the one that we're on right now. And go to session 6 resources and go all the way down to the bottom. And where it says Capture One Custom Workspace Location, this is where the thing that you just built is. This is where the file is. So on a Mac, it's in the User Library, Application Support, Capture One Workspaces. In Windows, it's Drive C, Users, Your Name, Application Data, Local, Capture One Workspaces. So to see where mine is really quickly, I'm going to show you. I'm going to go out to my Finder. I am going to go to my Library, Application Support, Capture One, and down at the very bottom, Workspaces. This is the file that I just built right here, this Verser workspace. If you copy that to your hard drive, then you can go to any studio that has Capture One on it anywhere in the world and go to this very same folder and copy your workspace into it, and you will have everything that you don't have to go through all of that setup again. This is actually true. What most digital techs that I know will actually do is they copy this entire folder, because this is where, so Aaron, I think this is what you were talking about, going back to your earlier part, this is where a lot of this is where recipes are for export. This is also where styles or presets are kept. This is where, depending on, I don't have any other presets that are made in this version of Capture One, But if you started doing templates and all of it is located in here. And if you go in and you copy this entire Capture One folder and then replace that in a machine, then you have all of your presets have come with it. And it's just, again, it's the way that most digital techs work. It's just so much easier than going in and trying to set this stuff up. So as you guys get more experienced in working in Capture One and you start personalizing it more and more and more, this becomes more valuable. Questions about any of this? Okay, guys, I got 247 right now. Let's make this a hard 10, 257, and we will actually jump into, we're pretty close in all of this. Okay, so the last part for my setup when I'm doing a session, and again, I try to get all of this done, or all the text that I work with, you try to get all of this done before your day starts. So you're always asking clients for, do you have a whole set of, do you have a shot list that I can actually build out files and do all of that kind of stuff for? That's what you're really looking to do. So I'm gonna go back to my library right now. And one of the great things about Capture One, again, is all of these right clicks, control clicks, right clicks, all of that kind of stuff. It's how so much of this stuff works. So right now, what I want to do is I want to see my Capture folder out in the Finder, out on my desktop. So this will work for Windows, even though the naming is different as well. If you come to the Capture folder under the session folders, if you click on this Capture folder and then hold down your, again, it's a right click, hold down your control key or your right button mouse or do a double swipe with your finger and come down and say, show me this in the Finder. So again, what I'm saying is I want you to show me the Capture folder in the Finder. And then simply let go. And it'll take you out to the Finder, and it's just a faster way to get there. So you can see it is in my pictures folder, all the way down here in the session that I just made. And guys, take a look at my list of sessions. All of these sessions that I've got right here, I always know that the one on the very bottom is the one that I'm working on because it's the most recent, and these are all in alphabetical order. So they're sorted alphabetically, but which automatically sorts them by the date format that I use. So it's always down here. But anyway, it picks my Capture folder for me. And in this Capture folder, I'm going to set up subfolders. Because when I shoot, I will go into the studio as a fashion shooter. They will we'll have 10, 12, 15, 20 shots to do for the day. Nobody puts these all together in one. A lot of times you'll have clients that the first, every other shot that you do is going to one creative, every other shot is going to another creative, a whole group of them is going up to somebody else. You do not put them all in one folder. That is no way to organize stuff. So for me, I do it by garment, by outfit. So, but that doesn't just apply to fashion. So let's say you're a wedding shooter. You can divide the wedding day up into 4 or 5 different series of images. So for instance, year 01, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do numbers. Year 01 could be the bride getting dressed in the morning. Year 02 could be the trip to the church and the kind of behind the scenes at the church. Year 03 could be the wedding itself. Year 04 is all the pictures of the family at the church afterwards. Year 05 is the trip to the whatever the fuck the party is afterwards. The 06 is the trip to the airport to get on the plane. The 07 is the fact that they are actually flying you to the Bahamas with them because they want you to shoot bedroom pictures of them on their honeymoon. And again, hey, I not only shoot weddings, I do boudoir, and I do it really well, and I should come with you guys, and I will actually give you a small break on my fee for that part of the trip, whatever, as long as you're flying me first class. Right? So anyway, you can think of it that way. You can break this up. But anyway, so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to start with a new folder here. You can do these in Capture One itself, but it takes way too much time and it's too much effort. So I do it here. Everyone does it out in the Finder. So inside of your Capture folder, just click and you're going to hold down. In the Macintosh, the keyboard shortcut for making a new folder is Shift-Command-N, and it will make a new folder and it will actually be called Untitled. So I'm not sure what it is in Windows, but again, if you can't remember the keyboard shortcut, you can always just come up to the File menu and come down to New Folder. It's the same thing. Yes?
The shortcut is Control-Shift-N for Windows.
Yeah. So there you go.
Or
So,
N.
N is in Nancy. Okay, and you should have this folder, and you can see that the name of it is highlighted. I'm going to type in O1, and then I'm going to just hit the enter key or the return key. Now, this gets a little bit tricky right now. If I do the next one, because I'm going to do an O2 and O3 and O4, if I do the next one though, O1 is selected right now. So if I do O2, right, if I do Command N, well here, you can watch what happens. I'm going to do Shift Command N. You'll see it actually puts it inside of O1. That's not where I want it. But I'm going to go ahead and name this O2 and hit the enter key, and then I'm going to drag it into the same level as O1. So instead of doing that, just make sure you click underneath this to deselect a folder so that you don't nest them. So again, Command Shift N, and I'm going to call it O3, and then click underneath it, Command Shift N, O4, and click underneath it, and one last one, Command Shift N, and I'll do O5, and click underneath this. So then you need to be able to see your Capture One workspace. What I'm really looking for is this Session Favorites. This is the most grossly misnamed thing in the history of software. Now, wouldn't you think Session Favorites are like little hearts and shit? They actually use a little heart on this. They're not favorites at all. This has got nothing to do with your favorites. Nothing. What this is that these are session subfolders. That's what this thing should read. And everybody that I know for the last 20 years has bitched to Capture One and Phase One about this and saying, this is so badly named. But at any rate, it's subfolders. Session Favorites is not favorites. Session Favorites are subfolders. So you're going to select all 5 of those little files, the folders, and you're going to click and you're going to drag them over to this Session Favorites, and you'll see you'll get a little arrow that points at it with a 5 underneath it because I'm moving 5 of them, and let go. And it puts in 5 of them under here, and it gives them all little hearts. They shouldn't be little hearts. They should be these folders because that's what these things are. Does that make sense to everyone? So if you had a client that was doing a different naming convention, maybe they have a barcode number, or maybe they have a UPC number, or maybe they have some other way that they want to ID their whatever it is they're shooting. That's what you would name these subfolders. So once they're in here, what you do is, I'm going to actually start shooting. I've got a camera right here. You guys don't need a camera. I'm just going to show this to you really quickly, just so that you can see how this works. And then we're going to look at color. Yeah.
How to get pictures inside of your Finder if it's not.
How to do what?
How to get
Oh, yeah, this question keeps coming up. So if you don't have pictures in your favorites sidebar right here, if you're in the Finder, come down to your Finder settings. You should change all this stuff. Certainly, this is just my belief. By default, you do not have hard disks as showing up. So if you don't have this checked, you can connect a hard disk to your computer, but you won't see it on your desktop. I definitely have that checked. I do all of these. Connected servers, I want to be able to see the server on my hard drive. So anyway, that's in general. If you then go over to sidebar, it'll have a whole list of things that you can actually have show in your sidebar and not. You would want to put a check mark next to pictures. You should also have your home folder should be on there. If you don't do movies or music or that kind of stuff, you can uncheck that, but this is just what shows up there. And then say okay, and it'll now show up. Okay, so back here into my session favorites, what you're going to do now is you do not want to capture into the capture folder, which is by design what's set up. You see this little camera icon that's right next to the capture at the very top? That's telling you that this is the capture folder. That's how they use it. You'll also see in your output folder is a little gear, in your trash folder is a little trash thing. You can change which of these you want to be anything. So I can change what folder that I want something else to be my output folder. But anyway, I'm not going to do that right now. But I am going to change my capture folder to O1. So if you click on O1, and then again, it's a right click. It's a control click on a Macintosh, a double swipe finger on a trackpad, a right click on Windows. I'm going to do control click. You can in the come down drop menu and say set as capture folder. And when you do that, you'll see on the other side, this is another thing I hate about their UI stuff, Why is the icon on the right side of, I mean, on the left side in the sessions, but it's on the right side down here? I mean, it's just, anyway. But this is now the capture folder. So this is where my captures are actually going to be. So I'm going to turn my camera on and show you why this matters. Anybody have any idea what the ambient light reading in this room is right now at 100 ISO? You guys are so fucking slow, it's pathetic. Of course, my camera's not available. Who here is surprised? Oh, well, maybe because I don't have it plugged in. Huh. What's that? No, that's not you can't even call that an ambient light check. There's nothing up there. That would be a real stretch. Don't say that. It'll be the giveaway that you use that for every possible excuse. Okay, so here's my camera. This is my guess, a 15th at 2.8. Ooh, how good is he, right? So anyway, not that this matters, but important things to look at. If you take a look right down here at my naming, you will see that it's the name of my file, but it's added that 01. You remember we set that up to destination folder, and that is frame number 1. You will also notice two other things down here that are really important. The first is this gives me the readout of what my camera was set up at being. As a digital tech, you are staring at this number your whole life. This is the aperture number because photographers bump this aperture all the time, and it's your job to pick up on the fact that I did this by mistake because I was just moving my camera, and this is like, oh wait, why is the picture so dark now? Oh, well, because you set it to 5, 6 1/3, you idiot. Set it back to, don't say that to a photographer, just a word. Anyway, so that part's really critical. It'll also give you the reading of your lens. If you've got a zoom lens, this is a 24-70 and it's now set at a 28. But this right here caught a lot of people. So some of the people, and I'm bringing this up right now because I've already told some of the people this. I'm going to reset this camera to its default right now. So I'm just going to go into my menu. There's a video of me doing all of this, so you guys can watch the video. You know how to do it. So I'm going to reset. I'm going to clear all my camera settings and say OK to that. And then I'm going to go back to my 100 ISO. I'm just going to set it up here. And my 15th of a second. And f2.8. That's what I did my first group of images, the first one's at. And I'm actually going to put on autofocus now so that we can see it in focus. And here's this image. But let's compare this image to the very first one that I did. Do you guys see any difference other than the autofocus? Pretty close. But at any rate, what's wrong with this second picture? You betcha. Right here, big as life. This is set to shoot JPEG, not CR2. When I reset this camera to its defaults, this is true of Canon cameras. I don't know if this is true of Nikon or of Sony, but I know it's true of Canon cameras that when you reset your camera to its default, it changes the preferred format that you're shooting to JPEG, not to CR2. So there were groups who actually doing assignments 4.1 through 5.1 actually had their camera set to JPEG, which is wrong. So anyway, I'm going to rechange this now back to reset my format to be RAW. And now when I shoot the same thing, you will see I go back to CR2 under here on the bottom. So you're constantly watching as a tech this aperture number and this extension number right here. You're also looking at focus. Oh, that's actually something we didn't do. In your tethered shooting right here, I'm actually going to add another drop-down panel here. So I'm going to close up my camera settings. I'm going to hover over the tether at the very top, Control-click to kick the flyout menu, and we are going to add focus. And when you have focus on here added, you can then actually click on this little eyedropper and you can put it on anything. So if I wanted to see, is that screen in focus? Pretty much. Is my notepad? Not so much. You can also see this again is not in the Pro version. This, I don't think. This is in the Studio version. This center to eye or center to face. What it'll do is if you've got somebody on set and they're running all over the place in the days of, well, up until recently, you would use this little magnifying glass and you would just keep dropping it over wherever their face was to then check focus. That's how most people would do it. But the other thing that most people would do is this, especially for people who are shooting fashion or you're shooting horizontal. I'm going to show you what horizontal looks like. I mean vertical looks like. So this is a vertical image right here. And you'll see that I've got a lot of room on this side here. So what most people will do for this is they'll grab this focus panel and they will pull it out and then they will actually drag it to make it really big. And this way you can actually, this is actually gives you a much bigger target to then hit. And it won't crowd your viewer too much in here. Does that sort of make sense? You can even overlap these slightly. It'll go over it a little bit. If you go over it too much though, then it'll snap back inside of it all. So to get it back inside, just bring it over and eventually it'll drop back in. So this would be the other thing that I would always have in my camera part. Okay, however now I'm gonna go back to my library. This will be the end of it. And I'm going to control click on my O2, control click and say set this is my capture folder, and it's actually going to change this now. And so O2 is now, you'll see the little camera icon is next to it. If I go to my next capture naming, again, anytime you do anything in the library, you need to look at your naming. So if you come over here and you take a look at the naming, you will see it did change the destination folder to O2, but you see it's like saying, oh, so we're gonna start at 06. It doesn't understand that I've moved to a different subfolder and I should actually change the naming. So this naming is at 06 right now, but I'm starting a completely different group right now. So to change that part of it under next capture naming, you come to the little three arrow dots that are at the top. You click on this and you come into here and you say reset capture counter. And now this again is live and it'll show you exactly what we're talking about. Not only that, you'll see that all of my images are going to go away in just a second and I only have a single one left. Because I'm now in my subfolder number 2. And so you can see it's automatically changed that naming for me. This is the only thing I needed to worry about. But I'm going to do 3 more pictures really quickly. And you will see that now I am at 04 right here, and all of a sudden the art director comes back in and says, well, we had the wrong sunglasses for your shot 01. You need to shoot more. And I'll say, okay. So I'm going to go back to my library folder. I'm going to then control click on 01 and say set as capture folder. But now I have a problem. My next naming on this, again, go to your naming folder. Your next naming on this is going to be 05. I've already got an 05. Actually, I take that. Oh, if I go back to my capture folder, I'm actually looking at 02 still. So if we go back to the capture folder, click on library, click on capture folder, and you can see I've got an 05 here already. But this next capture naming is telling me I'm also going to name this 05. If I shoot this, it's going to overwrite this file. I don't want to lose that file. So instead of resetting this, because you can't reset this to 1 or it will overwrite all of these files, you come over to that same little 3 dots next to capture naming and you'll say set capture counter. And I'm going to set it to frame number 6 and say okay. This live preview shows you again exactly what you're doing. And so now I'm going to pick up right where I left off. I was in 05 right here, and my next frame will actually be followed as 06. I'm going to do a little Dutch here so you can see the difference. And I'm in 06. And guys, that's capture, tethered capture in a nutshell. Questions about this? Are we good on this part? Shoot.
When I try to switch my capture folder, it asks me if I wanted to keep
It actually, yeah, so I don't get that on mine. So the first time you actually say that you want to change your capture folder, a lot of you will get a warning that comes up and says, do you want to save the capture folder as a sub or as a session favorite, a subfolder? So what it'll do is it's this folder right here. Again, I'm going to say, show me this capture folder in the Finder. So now my O1 is my capture folder, so this is what it's showing in the Finder. But that warning that you're getting is, do you want to keep this parent folder as a session favorite? So this is what it would look like. Sorry. You can make it, you can do it yourself. So I'm just going to grab the capture folder and drag it over here as well. The problem with this is that these are not all in the same order. This is the parent of these. I would never want to put images in here and these. That would make no sense, right? So I always say no to that. It seems like they've removed that now because you can do it if you want to, just like I just did it. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then for the naming, the folders, would you, if you wanted to change the name, would you recommend doing it like in the Finder or in Capture One?
Oh, it doesn't matter where you do that. So here, this is a great thing about Capture One. So if I go in here and I say like I want to change 04 to 044, sorry. You'll see it changes it automatically in Capture One. If you change it in Capture One, I'm going to take it back to 04. And then we go look at it. Again, you can look at subfolders as well. Control click, just say show me this in the Finder. It's been changed back to 04. So they go back and forth. The only thing you cannot change, guys, is the session name. This guy right here, you cannot change that. Again, if something got named wrong, you simply build another, well, let's just see right here. So let's say that, oh my God, this is the wrong date. I put in the wrong date. This is not, let's say that we shot this yesterday and I put in today's date. And you're like, oh no, I really didn't want to do this. So everybody do this with me really quickly just so you can see how this whole thing works. So we are going to, because we'll do renaming, batch renaming really quickly. So come back into Capture One. So, oh my God, no, I screwed all this up. Oh no. So click on it. We're going to add a brand new session. Again, if you do this with me, then we can do all the moving in the file. So start a brand new session for me, please. And we're going to name it 2025-03-06. Again, I put in the wrong date. It was really yesterday that we did all this. Underscore VER underscore C1 Pro demo. And again, it's going to go in my pictures folder. I'm going to say OK to that. And again, you don't see any of those things right now. All of my captures are gone. I don't have any session. This is a brand new session, which is fine. So then I'm going to go out to my library, out to the pictures folder, and I'm going to do 2 sets of Finder windows right here. So let me get rid of all of these first. Sorry. So I'm going to do a new Finder window, and I have this tricky little thing that will allow me to resize that, and I'm going to do another one, and resize that. So again, we've had this conversation before, I think. I always recommend that you copy from the top to the bottom. Always do it in the same direction. It's just a way, it's a safeguard, because if you copy in the wrong direction, you can actually, if you're trying to overwrite files in one direction, you could do the wrong way, and you could actually copy new files with old files that you don't want to do. And anyway, it's just always copy in the same direction. So first off, I'm going to sort mine by name. And I'm going to go to my pictures folder. And in 07 is where all the files are that I screwed up. So again, this is where all my subfolders are and all the files that got screwed up in here. I'm going to do it to the same spot here in my pictures folder. And again, back to 06 now. This is now the capture folder where I need them all to be. So I'm simply going to grab all of these subfolders here, and I'm going to drag them down into this folder right here. And then I'm going to get rid of this. And I can now see, this is my new session right here, the 06 session. You'll see up at the very top, that's where the name actually is, 06. You can still grab these subfolders and drag them over to your session favorites and let go. And now I've got exactly what I was looking for. So these are now correct. But the problem I have now is that these all have the wrong name, right? So we're going to fix that right now. So does everybody have these in the new session with the wrong name? All right, so we are going to control click on the very top. I take it back. We're going to select all of the thumbnails. So Command A will select them all. So they're all selected. And the reason I can see, you'll see, this will actually show me a 6 up right now. I'm going to shoot a few more frames in here really quickly just to give me something, just to show you guys what it ends up looking like. Oh, and that's all going into my capture folder right now. So this reset my capture folder. I did not want these images in that capture folder, so I'm going to reset it. And so again, you'll see if I do a control click and say show me this in the Finder, I just put all these folders, because my capture folder was the one that was selected. I just put all of these into that capture folder. They all should have gone into session 1. And actually, camera counter, I didn't change my camera counter. I fucked all of this up, so I'm just going to get rid of all these and reset things correctly. So again, I'll go back to my tether shooting, because again, I made a new session, and it resets my capture naming part back to its default. So let me get out of all that. So my capture naming, click on the little 3 dots, come up, and now I can use my preset and say Verser's naming. And again, it'll give me exactly what it's looking for. And you can see now I'm in it looks like I'm in Capture 1. I'm still in the Capture folder right now, because that's the Capture folder that's been named. So I'm going to back to my library. And I will control click on 1 and say set this as my Capture folder. I'm going to click on my Capture folder. I don't see any images right now. It's because you haven't clicked on Capture folder to show it to you. So I have got 6, 5, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to shoot a few more frames here really quickly. My next capture name is going to be, I just need to make sure that I'm set right, because it should be frame number 7. So up here, capture naming destination, it's saying number 5. I'm going to reset the counter to number 7. Not the renaming part. To number 7. And then just do some other frames. Say what? No, 17. Oh, that's okay. You'll figure this out anyway. So anyway, because I'm renaming them all anyway. When I hit Command A to actually select them all, this is actually still showing me all of them, which I don't want to do. So let me choke this up a little bit. Let's do a bunch of frames. Hang on. Eventually, it'll run out of room for it to actually show you what's going on in here. I know, right? This is art. This is my art. And I'm just going to print this really big, and then it'll really be art. All right, Command A one more time. Finally. So what ends up happening is it'll show you the most that it can show you and then tell you that there's more. So anyway, that was all. Can you believe I went through all of that to get to there? All right, so I'm going to select the first one. So you want to do a select all, and then hover over your very top one and hold down your control key again. Get your right click down, and we're going to do a right click, and you're going to come down to batch rename, and then we're going to rename this, the batch rename. So it knows what the job number is. It's thinking it's this SO022. Yeah, it has no idea what this job name is. So I'm going to change this part right here. So I'm going to click on job name and go across it. The C1 Pro demo is still what I want, but 20250306 underscore C1 Pro demo, and get rid of that guy right here. Then again, I need my destination folder in here, so I'm going to go to get rid of, I'm going to click to open up my naming format. I'm going to get rid of the 3-digit counter, put in an underscore, grab my destination. Oh, this is not going to give me destination, but I know that my destination here was my subfolder 01, so I'll put in an 01 underscore, and then the 3-digit counter, and bring that up. Click on the drop down and say I want 3 digits, and then say OK. And then again, look at this thing right down here. It's going to start this naming at frame number 24. I don't want that. I want to start at frame number 1. So I'm going to just reset my name, rename counter, and click OK. Rename. You have could be paired. Fine. Proceed. Don't show that to me again. And then come up to my top, and there we go. So that's what you have to go through to rebuild a session, to have it be the session name is correct and then the renaming is correct. Does that make sense, everyone? Okay, let's change all of this and actually talk about color. Shoot.
So since we added the focus do we need to save our workspace again, or does it save it automatically?
So wait.
We added one more tool to our workspace.
Sorry.
Do we need to save it again?
Hey, run it by me again.
Okay, so we added focus, right?
Oh, yeah. So if you added focus, yeah. So the question is that if you added focus, we added that focus space, you just want to come up and save that modified workspace, because that's now the one that we really want. So again, you would simply come up to the window menu down to workspace, and you can just hit save workspace, and then you would type in the exact same name. So cursor workspace. And then when you hit save, it's going to say, do you want to replace the old one? Say yes. Okay, so do you guys still have the files that I gave you that was the assisting working files that had the installers for the software? If you don't still have that folder, you're going to need to get it from me right now. So this would be a good time to take, it's 3:30, a hard 10-minute here, guy. Be back at 3:40. If you do not have those working files, that folder, you need to stick around and get them from me really quickly. And I'm going to pause this recording. No. Okay, so these four, so anyway, if you have ever opened up a session in Capture, so let's say I built this original session in Capture One 12. Then Capture One 12 went to Capture One 14, and then I think it went to 21, and now it's at 23. They've had this really weird naming shit for a long time. But at any rate, every time I open it up in a newer version of Capture One, this dialog box opens up and it says, you have got to upgrade this session to the newer version of Capture One. Do you want to do that? And when I say yes, what it does is it creates a new, these are preference files for this session. So if I were to go back to session number 12, one of these would actually open it up in session 12. The other would not. So the problem that I have with this is that it never gives you a clue about which one is which. So you would think that maybe this backup number 2 is the most recent one. I don't know which one is the most recent one, so I'm just going to show you how I would go about doing this. Instead of, this is how usually you would double click on one of these. So I'm just going to try double clicking on the first one up here. I'll do a middle one because it shouldn't be this middle one. We'll just see. So I'm going to double click on that, and you'll see that I'm getting some weird thing. It's not happy about this. It's actually trying to open up in terminal. That's strange behavior. But at any rate, I don't know which one of these to actually use. So if you go inside of Capture One instead, and you go to your File menu, and you come down to Open, and then you navigate to that folder, which is what I'm going to do right now. So I'm going to go into my Columbia assisting. Yeah, this is not where yours is going to be. This is just mine. And I click on this. You'll see that the one it picks in here should be the one that actually opens into Capture One. So I'm going to click Open to that, and indeed, it actually is the one. So either way, you should be able to get this image opened up. The session opened up, not the image. Yes. What if what? Still can't hear you, sorry. No, it's not only do you whisper, there's still the wedding party that's out here. It's like, what if what? Oh, so it doesn't pick up any of them. Cancel. If it doesn't take any of them, go back into the Finder, go to that same folder, and then double click on any one of those backup ones. And it's going to say cancel, and then hit boom. And that goes in the terminal, so we cancel on that. So we do not have a session that this will work for. What do I do? Exactly what I do. You build a brand new session that's got the same name. So again, if I couldn't get this open, none of those files that I just had worked. So I would come over to, again, my library, click on new session. And in this way, we can update it to today because you don't want to overwrite the session that it's going to be on. So we're just going to make another new session for, let's do it for tomorrow, just so it doesn't get confused with the one we've just made for today. So again, 2025-03-08 underscore VER underscore C1 Pro demo. Again, I'm going to put this back into my pictures folder. That's because that's where yours are. Where are yours? Is it on your pictures folder? Yeah. Okay, so go to your pictures folder and say choose and hit OK. You don't need to worry about capture naming changes right now because we're not going to be shooting tethered. So then again, click on the capture folder, hold down the control key and click and say show this me in the Finder. And here it is in the Finder. I'm just going to bring my screen down a little bit. Command N will give me another screen at the very top. And you need to go then find the capture folder that you cannot open. So I'll just act like it's this one right here. And inside that capture folder, I've moved all of those out. Just find all those raw files and do Command A to select them all and drag them into the capture folder of the new session you just built and let go. And then when you come back into here, they'll all, as long as you've got the capture folder selected, they'll all show up. Did that work? Okay. So has everybody else got this thing? Oh, by the way, really quickly, if you do multiple sessions and you're going back and forth, there's this drop-down menu right here that'll allow you to go back and forth. So I'm actually going back to the one right before this. This is the one that I had that is the one that we're going to actually work with. And I didn't really have any reason to have this be the image that came up, but there'll be a reason that we look at this in just a second. So does everybody have this image that looks like this? Does anybody not have this session? If it's not sorted the way this looks right now, you can actually click on these two little arrows that are at the very top of your thumbnails and click on a drop-down menu, and you want to have it sorted by name. If name is already selected and you click on it a second time, it will do a reverse order of it. You'll see now it's got a little slash next to it, and this check by the reverse is on. Just click on name again, and it'll actually order it. So this is roughly the order to have it in. I don't know what's wrong with this file right here. It's a thumbnail issue, though, because if you click on it, it'll actually show you a bunch of crowns. So, Aaron, are you okay on there, or is that?
Yeah, I don't know why half the file is
Okay. Oh. All right, so does everybody have this open? Yeah. Okay, phew, geez. Okay, I'm going to select the box of chalk at the bottom. It's the one that's got the most color in it. This is where we're going to actually, no, I take that back. Scroll down. There's another one. There's some test tubes in here somewhere, I think. Yeah. There's these test tubes kind of down at the bottom that looks like this. This is where we're going to start in all of this. So we are going to do color here in Capture One. That's the one thing that they don't touch on in the certification thing that you guys did with them. And it's understandable. Doing color in Capture One, I've got to be really honest with you. This part of Capture One is probably as deep as damn near the whole rest of the program. So I'm going to try to simplify this for you in as much as I possibly can. We're going to touch on most of the bases here. I'm not going to kill you with this, but there's some things that you can do with color in Capture One that you can't really do anywhere else. I'm shocked that Photoshop has not stolen some of these ideas from them, but who knows? Maybe they're just too proud. So to start with this, you're going to come, so again, I've got this image up. You're going to come up to the Adjustment Tool tab. And in the Adjustment Tool tab, now the way we've got ours set up is at the very top you've got Layers and Masks. If you click on that, this will open up. We will be working in Layers and Masks in just a second. You can see while we're here really quickly, under the Layers tab, there's a thing that just says Image Layer. Mine's actually got a blue exposure in mine. I want to reset this image so that we don't have anything in here. To reset just a single tab like this, it's not going to be this tab right here, but let's say we wanted to do an exposure adjustment here. To reset just a single thing, so I'm going to drag the exposure up on here. So I just opened up my exposure tab, pushed it open to make it a little bit brighter. To reset this tab, this tool only, and not anyone else, just this tool, you click on the reset arrow that's actually in the tool. So it's this little arrow that points, it's sort of like a counterclockwise arrow. Click on that, it'll reset that. If you want to reset the entire image, so you'll notice up here in my case, and you probably have the same thing because I think I gave you my version of it. In your layers palette, do you have a blue exposure?
Yeah.
You do? I want to reset this thing. I want to reset everything. So let's grab that exposure and push it up a little bit more again. Now, instead of using both of those, I'm going to come up to the reset at the very top. So the reset at the very top in the tool tab up at the very top is a global reset. It will redo everything. If you click on that, it gets rid of the adjustment layers. It resets the exposure. If I white balanced it, it resets it. It resets everything. So that's the place that I want to start with here. Okay. So if we take a look down through this adjustment part right here, we'll get back to layers in just a second. But if I go down here, we're not going to deal with styled brushes or match look right now. We are going to open up white balance. This is where you can set white balance again. But unlike the tool, the drop-down tool right here, where you get to pick the white balance, all it does is allow you to pick it. This way, you've got the color picker right here, but this way you can also actually make adjustments using the sliders. So if you want to warm your entire image up, this is the way a lot of people emulate afternoon daylight, is by doing that. If you want to completely cool it off, this is the way people will do that. It's really hard to see that on this image, so let's actually pick the image that's right underneath it of the girl. We'll do the same thing with her. If you click and drag it to the right, you warm the image way up. It looks more like afternoon light, like golden hour. If you crank it all the way down, it looks more like like nighttime, like moonlight. In moonlight, if you're trying to emulate moonlight, you not only have it cast in a cyanic like this, but you also radically underexpose it. And I mean, this starts to play more of those kinds of games. But at any rate, that's just kind of what's going on in here. You don't have these sliders if you use just the white balance tool that's up at the very top, or the one that's with your camera. So I'm going to reset this again. So just coming down here, I'll click on the color white balance tool, and we'll just reset it. So white balance again, the little tool, the arrow that's pointing backwards, will reset that. Base characteristics we've already talked about. This is where, again, I've got a generic version of this. If I built a color profile for this shooting, I could use that color profile and I would load it right here. I've also got my exposure is down, so I'm going to reset that. I'm going to close this part up. So exposure, contrast, brightness, saturation. So we're going to go back to saturation into this image right here. Again, I'm going to click on the global reset just to make sure I don't have any weirdness going on in here. There is a saturation slider that's down here at the bottom of this. If you click and push it all the way to the side, you'll notice that you don't get really that much of a shift in things. If you double click on any of those icons, they reset. Some of these saturate a little bit more, like the blue is saturating a bit more, but it's not really that heavy-handed. You should think about the saturation slider here more like you think about vibrance in Photoshop. So again, the way vibrance works in Photoshop is that it takes colors that are not very saturated and saturates them, but colors that already are saturated, it really backs off on those. It really stays away from those. So it doesn't let you get that like electric shock neon kind of color. That doesn't happen. So that's what the slider is here. So it's definitely got its uses. This high dynamic range, this is highlight recovery. It's also shadow recovery. So if we actually select, let's go back to the scene of the girl that's on the outside right here. I don't think, let me see if there's got anything that's actually blown out. Yeah, if you can get down to image number 023, it's the very bottom one in here. The highlights in the background are a little bit more blown out. The highlights in her shirt are a little bit more blown out. If you click on your exposure warning up the very top, remember we already set that, you'll see that there's a little bit of stuff that's blowing out in the highlights and also a little bit of shadow that's actually blocking up here. So most people will turn this on when they actually do work with the highlight recovery tool and the shadow recovery tool, because you can then watch it happen in real time. If you want to do the minimum amount of change just to get it back, so with that exposure warning turned on, and I come down to my highlight recovery tool, and I start to push it towards the right, towards the left, you can see it takes very little to recover all of the highlight stuff in there that's actually burned out. So I've got a -19. If you want to open up the shadows a little bit, you start pushing in the other direction and you'll see the blue starts to go away. And so this would be the minimum amount that I need to actually, I would still leave the shadow that's underneath her hat and the hair back in there. That would be ridiculous to have shadow detail in that part here. So that's basically just what's going on here that allows you to set those things. Continuing to work our way down, there are levels and curves. They work similar to Photoshop, but it's a little bit different process. So in Photoshop, you have typically a diagonal curve that goes around. I'm going to start in levels right here. We'll get to curves in just a second. You've got those sliders there at the bottom. What these two do is that they are anchored. They're points that are anchored. So right now you can see you've got a black point of 0 that's set to a black point of 0, anchored to 1. This is input. This is output. The same thing over here on the opposite side here, the white point, 255 is the input, 255 is the output, and then you've got a midpoint slider here in the middle. You have all those same three things in levels in Photoshop. If you click on the levels on the black point slider in the bottom and start to drag it in, you will see that what you're saying now is, I drug it up to a 40. You're saying I want everything from 0 to 40 to be 0, to be black, and that's why all those shadows just got blocked up. You can do the same thing on the highlight side. You can push it in the other direction, so we're really building contrast. You're saying, in my case, I drug it over to a 210. You're saying I want everything from 210 to 255 to actually be white. To get rid of all that, again, click on the reset for this panel alone. You can do the opposite. You can say, I want to actually flatten this out. I'm going to then make this less contrasty. I'm going to drag the output slider and pull it back, and you can see that really clips your flattens out your highlights. You can do the same thing with the shadow tones in here. So it's basically working the exact same way. It's just a different layout than the way it works in Photoshop. And then finally, you've got the midpoint slider here that will actually make things midtones darker or midtones brighter. What you'll notice is, though, you cannot move the output. The output is always dedicated to 128, which is the midpoint of our 255, 0 to 255 range. I'll close that up really quickly, open up curves. It works the exact same way here as it does in Photoshop. The only difference about this is that you should know is that in Photoshop, as long as you are in RGB color space, when you change the color of anything, if you go in and you change the red curve or the green curve or the blue curve or anything, whatever, you not only change the color, you change the tone, you change the luminosity. So if I go into the red channel, for instance, here, and I start to drag something down, I make it more cyanic, but I also make it darker. So anyway, in RGB, that is the case. If you want to, so you can see here, if I'm going to actually do saturation, make a contrast curve in here. So I'm just going to make a general S curve. So kind of grab your shadow point and pull it down a little bit, and grab your highlights and shove them up a little bit. This is the classic curve here. But what you'll see that's happening in here is that you've also picked up saturation. You can see the red in the side of her face right here has picked up a lot of saturation. That is because we are doing this in RGB. If we reset this curve, again, click on the little reset button to do that. Instead, we're going to do the same thing, but you're going to pick Luma now instead of RGB, and we're going to do the exact same move. I'm going to pull this S curve down, and I'm going to push this one up. And you'll see that you get the contrast, but you don't get that saturation in her face. Because again, we are doing this now in effect in an LEB color space, not an RGB color space. So if you don't want your color to get polluted and you want to put in an S-curve to build contrast, you would pick this Luma slider. Other than that, the RGB curves are identical to the way they are in Photoshop. I'm going to reset that. And finally, we get down to the color editor. So in the color editor, go ahead and click to open this guy up. There are 3 panels in the color editor, 3 tabs in the color editor. And I want some room in here, so I'm going to collapse all of my other layers. I want to be able to see all of my other tools. So I'm going to collapse all of these other guys so that I can really see everything that's here in the color editor. I'm going to collapse my high dynamic range, all of this stuff. So this is basically what I've got. So in the basic color editor, you can actually just pick basic colors and say you want to move them. I'm going to tell you right now, nobody uses the basic panel. It's just not precise enough. Nobody uses this. But if we go back up to the test tubes, you can sort of see what it does. If we pick the red color, so I'm going to pick the color that's all the way on the far right-hand side. Again, Capture One, this is a range that's predetermined by Capture One. You don't have any variability in this at all. But if we take the saturation now slider and drop it all the way down, you can see that what it calls red, it's now going to completely desaturate, and we now get this gray color in there. But you can see it didn't pick up the other colors. So this is not really that useful a tool for us right now because it's a blunt hammer. So again, I'm going to reset this one. To get to the reset button, it's up at the very top. Click on to get reset. I'm going to go to the advanced one instead, and this is where the magic begins to happen in Photoshop, in Capture One. So the way this tool works is that you select things by color, and then you can modify the color. So to do that, you grip there's a little eyedropper tool that sits at the bottom of this color. You'll see that there's nothing in this space right now. Click on that, and we're going to come over, and I'm actually going to click on the red. So we're going to try to do the same move that we just did by desaturating this and just see if we can't get everything in here. So I'm going to click on that, and what you see automatically happens is that there is a range that comes up here on this color wheel. So this is a color wheel, and it's a standard one with red here at 3 o'clock. It's opposite at 9 o'clock is cyan, and again, green is on the 120 in this direction, blue is at 240 in this direction, and then back to red. So it's a standard color wheel. However, what this is also showing you is the range. So this has picked a range for me right in here. Everything that is inside this defined little sort of triangle area is completely selected. But you see is how this stuff falls off. It kind of sort of like ramps down as you start to move away from it. That's what this smoothness slider is all about. So what it's saying is that I'm going to fully select these colors in the middle, but then I'm going to let this taper off so that you get a more organic, natural selection. You'll see in a second what we're going to control all of this to see what happens. However, what's not happening in this is the saturation in this. So the most saturated part of this color exists on the very outside edge right here. As you get to the middle down here, it actually goes to the very middle right here is completely desaturated. It is a neutral gray. You can move all of these parts. So I want to get the whole color selection. So I'm going to hover over the little line that's right here, and I'm going to click and drag it down to this point. That is now saying I want to include all of the color that is in this range right here. You can also grab these panels, the handles that are on the side, and you can move them. You can actually drag them to say I want to expand my color range, or I want to narrow down my color range. This little dot that is right in the middle is the color that I selected. When I clicked on this thing, this is the exact color, that little dot. So you can actually move the entire color range, the selection around like this. This will reselect completely different colors. So, but it becomes really difficult to see what color you've really selected when you do this. Again, I'm going to select that point again. However, there's now methods that you can preview what you truly have selected. So if you scroll down here, you'll actually see at the bottom of this, it says View Selected Color Range. I want you to check that mark right there. And what happens when you do that is that everything that is now outside of this color range turns to black and white. What's inside this color range remains in color. So this is a way that you can preview and say, well, what am I really looking at here, and what am I not really looking at here? And how can I change that part? So for instance, in my case, I want to actually make sure I'm selecting all of this color range. So you could click and drag this little slider all the way down to get that saturation point, but an easier way to do it is this little icon right here. So right across from View Selected Color Range, it's the thing that looks like a pie wedge. If you click on that, that will automatically expand this to give you the entire saturated range. Sometimes we didn't see this before, but when you do a color that's not very selected, it will actually not extend all the way to the saturation range. So I can click and pull this guy back, and you'll see this is not now showing me my entire range of saturation, but if you click on this again, it will expand to all of that. So now what I can do is I can use this as a preview. I don't want to select this orange that's up at the top. I just want the reds that are down here. That means I need to narrow my color range down. You'll notice that the more oranges of the color range are sitting up in this area, up and sort of like from the 3 o'clock heading towards noon, as opposed from the 3 o'clock heading down towards 6 o'clock. So I'm going to grab this color slider edge that's at the very top, and I'm going to drag it sort of towards the color that I'm working with to try to narrow my range. And you can see as I start to get there, this range is beginning to turn black and white. So it's telling me that I'm getting rid of that. However, I'm all the way down now. I'm actually down on top of my color that I originally picked. And this has still got some color in it. That's where this roll-off, that's what they call this, actually comes into play. The roll-off is now too large for me. So I need to narrow my roll-off down. That is what smoothness is. So if you grab your smoothness slider underneath this color wheel and you start to drag it to the left, you will, if you watch this roll-off range, you'll see it narrow down. So I'm going to grab my smoothness slider and I'm going to start to push it down, and you'll see that it starts to then take away that orangey, that more orangey color. And so now I'm down to the point where I'm actually about as good as this is going to get. It started to invade a little bit of my color range in the reds down in here. I don't know if that's roll-off. I'm suspecting that it probably is roll-off. So I'm going to see if I can't push this out a little bit. There are other ways that we can actually go about getting this color part that's in here, though, which we will look at in just a little bit. I can open up my color range in the other direction a little bit more to see if I pick up a little bit more of the reds. And more of those saturated reds that are on the top really are in that range that's heading towards the 6 o'clock. So if I start to move in this direction, I'm actually grabbing all of those reds. So now looking at the color alone, I've got a pretty good selection of just the red that's actually in here. So then I can modify it by saying, okay, well, I want to change its color. So I'll come down to the hue saturation and I'll click and I'll drag this up and make it more saturated. Or, I mean, I'll just change the color. I'll make it more orange, or I'll make it more blue. So I'm going to double click to kick that one out. I'm going to kill the saturation on this though, but when I do that, it's just going to look like a black and white photograph because I still have this view selected color range turned on. This is the time now to turn it off. We're now back to our full color thing, but just that color range is selected. And so now when I actually drop my saturation all the way down here, you can see this does a really good job of just getting the saturation of this one particular color right here, and it's not affecting anyone else. You can also use the lightness slider to make this lighter or darker. So this is where it gives you all the control that you basically need in here. So this is working in this area like the hue saturation dialog box in Photoshop, but this gives us our direct selection here. Does that make sense, everybody, what's going on? Okay, so that part works out really well. However, in a perfect world, I still didn't get that. Again, just drop your saturation slider all the way down again. You'll notice that I'm still picking up. There's a couple of little areas back in there in the orange area in here that actually still didn't get. I mean, they still ended up going gray. So there's a little bit of gray in there. So I'm not really happy with that part. So I'm going to start this whole process over. You'll notice down here underneath this, you've actually got color picker channels that are sitting right here. There's two of these. I've got one right here was changing that color, and there's another one up here, and I don't know what this one up here is changing. I want to actually get rid of these guys, so I'm going to click on the minus slider at the very bottom. It gets rid of the first one, and I'm going to do the second one as well. So it undoes. You can do multiple color pickers. So I could do one that just did the red range. I could do a second one that did just the blues. I can do, well, here, we'll do it really quickly. You'll see what I mean. I'm going to click on this. I'll click on that same point. So again, the eyedropper tool. I'm going to click on this. You see it puts down this range right now. But then I'm going to click on this guy again, and I'm going to click on the blue. And now I've actually got a blue one here, and then I can click on the green, and I've got the green one right here. And you can make changes to this, and you can turn them on and off. So if I desaturated the green one right here and then turned that off, it would come back. If I turn it back on, it comes back on. So anyway, there's a better way of doing this kind of work here. So I'm going to show you what that is right now. So I'm going to get rid of these guys again. And instead, I'm going to come up to my layers first. So if you come up to layers up at the very top, click on layers to get the drop-down menu to open up. And in layers, what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to add a layer so that I can put this adjustment on the layer. Now I want you to look at this part really quickly. Open up your exposure tool if you would really quickly here, just so that you can see it. When we actually add a layer, it's going to show anything that could be on that layer. It's going to actually show you, it is going to give you an indication near the exposure, near whatever tool you've got open. So I'm going to come up to the top, and it's the little plus here right next to the word that says layer. You don't want to click on the plus. You want to click on this drop-down menu, and in the drop-down menu, you've got several choices. You can do a new empty adjustment layer, a new filled adjustment layer, a new clone layer, a new heal layer. So in our case, we're not going to do cloning and healing here. Frankly, I wouldn't do this here. I would do all of that in Photoshop myself. But we're going to do a new filled adjustment layer. And when you click on this, you don't really see anything change in here. However, you will see a thing up here that says filled layer number 1. And I'm going to double click on that, and I'm going to rename it red color. And then just hit the enter key. Now, you're not going to know this right now. I haven't made a selection. I haven't done anything. But if you hit the M key, think mask. If you hit the M key, you get this red overlay on your image. And what this red overlay on your image is showing you is that everything that I do now will affect everything that is on this image. So this mask that covers it all is an indication that all of this image is going to be affected. We are going to use that in a way that we can fine-tune and control where the color changing that we're doing actually happens. So I'm going to hit the M key again to unshow that. Don't worry, this will become a little bit more evident in a second. With this red color layer selected and active, we're going to come down to our color. Oh, this is what I wanted to show you. See all these little icons that are sitting right here next to all of these? These are all the things that can be land up on this layer. So color editor is one of them. So again, I'm going to pick the little color picker tool guy right here, the little eyedropper tool. I'm going to select this. I am going to turn on my show me the color selected range. I'm not going to worry about this thing that's over here at all. I'm just going to leave this. I want to make sure that I've got everything in here selected. So I'm actually going to expand my color range by, again, clicking on the little full pie wedge to expand everything. But now I'm going to open it up. I'm going to actually extend it a little bit more into this area. What I want to make sure is that I'm getting all of the reds. I want the red in the test tube back here. I want all the red that's showing through in the test tube down here. I want the red that's being reflected in this. I just don't want to go so far that I start to pick up other colors. So for instance, if you really crank this thing open, you start to pick up the yellows. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to pull this back just to make sure that I don't get any of those yellows in there, but that I've got everything else. Again, I'm not going to worry about the orange that's here in the background. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay to this. This is actually going to work for me right now. And you can see if you take the saturation slider and you drag it all the way down, all of those things go, they all drop out. So I'm going to double click on this again to undo that. Instead now what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to turn off my view selected color here. I'm going to go up to, I'm going to hit the M key to show my mask. So what this is saying now is the color move that I'm doing here is going to affect the entire image. I want to be more specific about where it affects it. I want just this middle part to be affected. So if you come up to your layer mask, so come all the way up to the layer, click on this layer, and then hold down your control key and click on it. You can say you want to invert this mask. And when you invert the mask, what you'll see is now nothing is happening on here. If we actually do our color saturation move here and drag it all the way down, nothing changes because the mask is completely opaque now. It's hiding all of this. So again, nothing is happening on that. I'm going to double click on this to change that. Instead now I can paint with a mask. I can paint to actually show the mask. I'm going to paint this area in here to actually show where the mask is going to change. So I'm going to drag my saturation all the way down so that you can actually see it happen in real time. With that, the red color layer, number 1 selected, you're going to pick the paintbrush that's up at the very top. So if you click on the paintbrush that's at the very top above layers, this little paintbrush right here, not the magic paintbrush, not the AI paintbrush, but just the magic paintbrush right here, you will actually get a brush. If you come over here, you'll see that you've got sort of a brush. To control how this brush actually works, you click on these 2 double arrows that are up at the very top. If you click on these, you will get a flyout menu that allows you to control everything about the brush the same way that you would with a brush in Photoshop. So in my case, I'm okay with the size. If you click on the size and bring it up, it'll show you a preview of how big your brush is. The hardness works the same way in Photoshop as it does in Capture One. Capture One works the same in Photoshop. You'll see that there's 2 circles that are here on this brush. The one circle in the center is fully hard. The fall off on the brush is the softness of the brush is the outside circle. So you'll see as I start to actually make my brush harder, it comes in really tight. But if I make it softer, it goes out really dark. I mean, it goes way out. I'm going to make this relatively tight because again, I'm not too worried about the areas that are right next to it. And then you have flow here, and I'm going to grab flow and take it all the way up, and opacity all the way up. So I've got 100% flow, 100% opacity, and a relatively hard brush. And now I can come down on my image, and again, if you hit the M key, I don't know whether I've got mine showing or not. Yeah, that's what this little icon at the very top is about right here. If you've got mask visibility that's on, this thing is lit up. Now again, I haven't painted any mask yet, but watch what happens now when I actually start to paint. I'm going to start to paint across here, and you can see the red mask is actually coming. And you can be really sloppy about this, guys, because again, the colors that are right next to it, you don't need to worry about. So then I'm going to hit the M key to undo the mask, to hide the mask. Sorry, M key. And now you can see I've just desaturated only that color because it's on this layer mask. It's on this adjustment layer mask. You can actually turn the check mark on this mask off, and it'll actually bring it back. You can turn it back on. Adjustment layers have opacity, so you can actually grab the opacity of this and start to drag it down, and it will allow you, once you get all the way down to 0, in effect, you've turned the whole thing off. Is this working for you guys? Works pretty well, right? So I love the idea of selecting based on color. The color selection in Photoshop is relatively old and relatively clunky. Okay, we're going to do one other here really quickly. So if you go up to the top, let's do the box of crowns, or box of chalk. So I'm going to select this image, and you will notice as soon as I select it that my layers go away. I'm starting a brand new thing. If I go back down to that same test tube thing, whatever, all of that stuff will remain in effect. And if you restart Capture One, all of those settings will still be there. They're sticky. You don't lose those as you go away. So we're going to do the same thing here. Again, I'm going to make a new layer. So I'm going to click on again, this drop-down menu, and I'm going to do a new filled. So again, you can do an empty adjustment layer and then flip it. You can do, an empty one, you won't see, it will always look like everything is happening to your entire image. A new filled layer, you'll actually see the change happen on your entire image, and then you can go in and you can refine it. You can paint on, let's do this really quickly. Go back down to the test tubes really fast. Click on the test tubes. If we made a mistake with our mask on here, so again, I'm going to hit the M key to show the mask. If we made a mistake and all of a sudden we realize that, oh man, some of that is showing up in in this blue area right here, you can click on the eraser tool. So again, there's the brush on one side and then there's the eraser tool. It's right under the tag that says people. Click on the eraser tool. It also is a brush, so you can click on those two arrows to get the brush settings. So I can say, okay, this is how the size that I want of my brush. That's fine. Maybe a little bit harder. That's good. My flow all the way up, 100% opacity. And then I can come over here and I can actually erase part of this mask. So I can refine that part. So again, just so that you knew that that was going on. So now you can go all the way back up again to the chalks. So in the chalks, we're going to do the same thing. So I've got a layer that's actually filled on here. I'm going to hit the M key so that I actually hide it. So any change that I make, I'll actually see it happen across the board, and then I'll simply invert it and then change it, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to do a color shift on all of this. So I'm going to pick the blues. So I'm just going to come here and click in the middle to actually pick the blues. You'll see it does a completely different selection of this. Again, I'm going to go down to the bottom here. I'm going to click on the pie wedge to make it give me the entire range of saturation. You'll see that there's a new blue point that's in here. You can actually move the blue point itself. Now, it's really hard to see. So if we turn on the view selected color range, you'll see everything goes gray except for or black and white except for the blues. You can actually move this around. You can actually say, oh, I want to see it closer to the cyans, and it will actually shift this stuff around. Just like if you actually do this part, you'll see it shifts all the color. If I come all the way back over here, it's showing me a completely different color range. So again, I'm going to go back to the blues that were right here, or these blues that are right here, expand my color range into this. So I want to make sure that I'm grabbing all of this color here, so I'm going to expand it. I'm just going to open this up a little bit more to make sure that I'm getting everything here. I feel like I am getting everything here. So this part's actually working for me. And then again, I'm going to do a hue shift on this. So I'm going to grab the hue on this guy, and I'm going to push it all the way towards the red. That's how I'm going to go about doing this part. If you uncheck the selected color range and you can sort of see what's now happening, again, this bottom one, I can go up to my filled layer right here. I can turn this on and off, and you'll see basically the color range that I'm selecting. But let's say, oh God, I really don't want this happening to these blues right here. It's too strong. It's hyper-saturating this one right here. Well, again, we can actually work on this mask using our eraser tool now. So I'm going to grab my eraser tool. And again, this layer right now, this one is only a saturation. No, this is a hue move. So it's actually changing the move here. So I want to back off on the shift of color that's happening here. I'm going to grab my eraser tool. I'm going to click on my double-headed guy on the arrow that's pointing both directions. I'm going to drop my flow way down. And when you're working with a low flow, guys, you're down around this 2, 3, 4. It's the same as in Photoshop. Otherwise, things take off on you way too quick. And then I can start scrubbing across this, and you can see it starts to pull that color out. If you hit the M key, this is what your mask actually looks like. I removed all of that shifting from that color on that. So this just gives you all this kind of control that you can get here in Photoshop. So between being able to select the range and the masking, this thing is actually insane what it'll do. Now, you can add multiple controls to your layer. So again, I'm going to hit the mask to undo this part. If you turn it on and off, you can see that it is affecting the hue on this. But as long as I've got this thing selected, this filled range selected, I can actually change the exposure now as well. So I'm going to go up to my exposure slider. And with my exposure slider, I'm going to simply push it up. And you'll see it's pushing everybody up because the whole mask is now covering all of this other stuff here. It's not being restricted. It's doing everything in here. So in this case, what I would do again is I'm going to invert this. I'm going to remove the mask in essence. So control click, come on this, say you want to invert the mask. And now, only thing I want to actually change is the original blue that's in here. So I can simply come and select on my, this is actually my eraser tool, so not that, my paintbrush tool. and say, again, make sure my flow is all the way up because I'm not trying to do this subtly. Yep. And then just paint over this area, and it'll allow the exposure to actually come in. Does this all make sense? Okay, I'm going to Command Z to undo that. We're going to look at one last thing here really quickly. I'm going to get rid of this layer, so you can click on the layer. To get rid of them, you can just click on the minus tool. If you only click on the plus tool, what you end up getting is an empty adjustment layer. So most people prefer to control whether they get an empty one or a filled one. So, but anyway, the minus here will actually get rid of all of them. I'm going to do one more trick here really fast. I'm going to go after the blues one last time here. So again, I'm going to come down. I'm going to click on the eyedropper tool. I'm going to click on this blue right in the middle. I'm going to expand the range on it. And I'm going to do view selected color range, and that's going to show me this is what's going to be selected. But now if I come up to the top of my color editor and I click on these little 3 dots, I can say to them, create a masked layer from this selection. And when you do that, this mask has now been created. If we hit the M key to take a look at it, it's given you a mask that is only showing these tools right here, those colors right here. So let's say you can see I've gotten a little contamination on both sides over here. So I'm going to click on this color range version that just got made. I'm going to grab my eraser tool. I'm going to make its flow all the way up. I don't want to bring this in subtly. And I'm just going to clean up all these areas that are sitting outside this. All of this, and I'm going to get rid of these, and I'm going to get rid of those, and everything else. So now this is the only color range part that I've got. If I'm missing a little something here because this is actually in gray, it's not really a part of that, I can still add this using my brush tool to bring that in, to get all of that in. And this now is selected pretty much a perfect selection of those mid guys right there. Hit the M key again to undo that part. And then again, if we decide to do something like completely desaturate this, we can come up and do a saturation slider like that and kill all of this. So there's a lot that you can get going on in here using the combination of where you target this stuff and where the color actually ends up using layer masking. Questions about this? All right, the last tool, and this is something I cannot believe Photoshop has not stolen. It's the skin tone tool. If you click on this, we're actually going to do this work on skin tone, but this works on, skin tone is misleading because in skin tone, you still get to pick the color, and I'll show you what basically it does. So go ahead and pick the girl who's got sunburn. So this is extremely difficult to actually do in Photoshop, but for any of you who have been in my retouching class, when we've gone in and done tonal retouching and we're trying to smooth out or even out the blotchiness of skin, this is like the hyper challenge of them all. So what I want to do is remove the sunburn from this. I want to sort of even all of this out. And this is where the skin tool comes in. So if you click on the skin tool tab, there is a whole different set of things that are going down here. So we're going to, what we're going to do is to remove this, what you want to do is you want to pick a color that you want it to be. So what this thing does, I'm going to pick the eyedropper tool, and I'm going to actually select this right in this area, sort of on the side. Don't get too far to the side, but right in this area right here. It's a good unsunburned version of this person's skin. And if you click on this, you'll actually see it gives you a color range again. The same thing works as before. You can actually click on your view selected color part. The thing is that everything in this image is either black and white or it's within this color range. So when you click on this view selected, you're not going to see anything because there's nothing actually to see. Again, everything that's not in that selection is already black and white. The background is black and the bra is, background is white, the bra is black, and that's it. So everything else is in that color range. I'm still going to expand it nonetheless to make sure that I'm getting everything in here. But then until you've got your normal right here where you can do hue, saturation, and lightness, those are not the ones we care about. It's the ones that are underneath this. Uniformity, and what uniformity is that it's saying, okay, we are going to take everything in this color range. So you can see this is the spot that we picked, that little white dot, that's the color that we picked right here. What it's going to say is I'm going to take everything that is within this color range and move it down to be the same color well, depending on what I do, the same color, hue, and lightness as this little spot. So watch what happens. We are going to drag the hue slider all the way to the right. That removes the red. We're going to take the saturation all the way to the right. That removes the intensity, and we're going to take the rightness all the way to the right. So the area of sunburn right now, you can see, is considerably different than what we had going on before. It's not perfect, but this is now what I've done is I've said, I want you to move all of this color as close to the color underneath her as we can possibly get. To see a preview for anything in any tool that you have, if you hover over the reset arrow and you hold down your option key and then click, it will undo it, and then if you let go, it'll come back. So this will show you this is like a preview, with and without. This works on every single tool that there actually is in Photoshop. So I'm clicking on this to say, okay, I want that without, right? That's with, okay. So this works great, but it's not giving me everything I want, and it's kind of like a sledgehammer on this as well. I want to be able to control this a little bit better than it's actually being controlled. So instead, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come up to the very top. I'm gonna get rid of this, so I'm going to come down again underneath all of this. I take that back. I'm going to reset the color editor. I'm going to go up to the top now, and we're going to add a layer. So I'm going to click on my drop-down menu. We are going to add a filled adjustment layer, and I'm going to do the very same trick. I'm going to double-click on this and call it Sunburn. And I'm going to come down to skin tone again. I'm going to use that same picker to pick the same point that I just did. And I'm going to completely expand it. I'm also going to kick this open a little bit more just to make sure I've got all the skin tone in there. Make it just a little bit wider. And then I'm going to take the uniformity all the way up, the saturation all the way up, the lightness all the way up. And it looks pretty much like we did before. But again, that is now on this sunburn layer. If you uncheck this guy, you'll see it comes back. Check this guy, it goes away. If you, again, you hit the M key, you can see that this image is completely covered. If I hold down the control key and I click on the layer and say, I want you to invert this mask, it all goes clear. It's still on there. But now I am going to take my brush. I'm going to make this a low flow on my brush. A little bit softer brush. Sorry, that's opacity, softer, like that. And a little bit smaller brush. Yeah. And then I'm just going to start working on this mask, and you can see it's making the sunburn worse because what it's doing is it's showing you the mask. Hit the M key. I'm hit Command Z to undo that, and then I can just start painting again, and you'll see it's starting to remove just the red part that's actually in here. She's got sunburn that's actually up on her top of her chest. She's also got some on her shoulders. You can actually go in and hit these guys. You can hit that other shoulder right here. So then when you turn this thing on and off, you can see it's considerably better. It's not quite where I would want it to be on the color, so I'm actually going to hit those a little bit more. But now you can see that there's a darker area in here. This is actually not doing as much lightness as I would like it to do. So I'm going to go after this with exposure. So I'm going to now do a second layer, filled layer. So I'm going to click on this and say, I want a filled adjustment layer. And then I'm going to go to my exposure slider. And in exposure, I'm going to pop it up. And you can see, by the time you get up to like a half a stop, she's already nuked out. Don't worry about that. We're still going to use that same trick that we just did. So I'm going to rename this exposure. And say, okay. Hover over it, control click exposure, and say invert the mask. So now it's completely hidden. I don't see anything, but I've still got that really soft brush that's set to a really low flow. And I'm just going to start to work on this areas right here to actually lift the exposure on this slightly. And there you go. So if I want to see what this looks like with and without, you can turn the exposure off and the sunburn off. You can turn them back on. Try doing that in Photoshop. Is this making sense? Say what? Oh. So anyway, the takeaway from this is that even though they call this thing the skin tone tool, don't think it's not just about skin. This will work on a watermelon. If you want to get all of the color closer to a certain green, if you've got a blue car and you want to get all of the colors sort of to more just one color of that, whatever. This works on any color range. So don't, again, Skin Tool is a really poor name that they actually pick for it. Yes?
So, you did all this work here, but like, when you want to take this into like Photoshop or Camera, when you export, like, does it say the preferences or whatever?
No, so again, when you do this export, that's going to be the last part that we get to here, is we're actually going to go into and look at the export. And we're going to actually build 2 recipes and knock them out. I want to show you one last thing here really quick first, though. If we go down to the girl that's on the green screen, so just select her really quickly. There's one last thing in color that I want to show you that's also simpler to do here, although Photoshop has actually added this now, and it's a direct rip-off of this. So if you click on color balance and open this thing up, you can actually see here that you can do 3-way, you can do shadows, midtones, and highlights. So what a lot of people will do who want to do serious work in this, if they want to do, this is really all about split toning. That's basically what's going on in here. Instead of doing this in one single version of this, this is what a lot of people will do. I'm going to click on the adjustment tool tab up here. I'm going to click on this, control click on this and say add tool, and I'm going to add color balance again, and then I'm going to do it one more time. Up to this tool tab, add tool, and color balance again. You can do multiple versions of your tools. Once I get this done, I'm going to change the top color balance to being highlights, the middle color balance to being midtones, and finally wherever the lower color balance is, I know I've got 3 of them in here. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed one at the very top. So the very top one, I'll do highlights, the middle one right here, I'll do midtones, and then the bottom one, I'll do shadows. So the quickest split toning in the world. I'm going to click on shadows, typical split toning, cooler shadows, warmer highlights. I'm going to click and drag down to make the shadows blue on her, and I'm going to go up to my highlight one. And take my yellows are already all the way up there. They should have been neutralized like this, but they're all the way up here. So immediate split toning. Crazy, right? So the final thing that we're going to get to really quickly here is export. So if you did all the setup that we had here before, again, I've lost mine, so let me go back to my Verser's workspace. And I'm going to click on my export. So we are going to build 2 quick recipes for here to actually export out. So I'm not going to use any of the pre-canned ones. We're just going to build these the stuff that most of you guys actually do. So Linnea, this would actually go to your point. What you end up having to do is you get the file the way you want it. You get that skin tone, again, more uniform, and then you would have to bake this file. You can't send a raw data out of Capture One as raw data into Photoshop the way you can from Lightroom. So at any rate, we're going to build these. So I'm going to click on the little plus button at the bottom, and we're going to do a new recipe. And you want to name these recipes exactly the way you're going to control this. So I'm going to make a Photoshop file out of this, because I'm pretty sure I can do a Photoshop file. Yep, you can do a DNG. So actually, I may be wrong about that. You could do the uniformity part and then export it as a DNG, and it'll bring it in. And any of the controls that are matched, you'll actually have. But that uniformity thing doesn't exist in Photoshop. So even though you get it out there as a DNG, it's not going to come in that way. But at any rate, so let's say I do want to do a PSD file. So I'll do PSD. And then I'm going to do Adobe RGB color space. So ADOBE RGB. And then finally 8-bit. And then you simply set that up. So you need to make sure that this thing is highlighted because this is the one we are editing. And then you just start to take a look at the recipe down here. You don't need to worry about location or naming. It's just going to use the image name for this. In the export format and size, you would click on the drop-down menu and you would come down to PSD. You would leave it, this is 8-bit. You would select your ICC profile as Adobe RGB. You don't need to change the resolution size on any of this. If you had cropped this and you don't want the crop to be applied, you could actually just say ignore the crop. And then you don't want any output sharpening on this. Again, I'd rather do that later in the game. The keywording, all of that stuff you can do here, and all of this part's fine. In the output location thing, I want to change one thing here, though. I'm going to add a subfolder, and I'm going to give it the same name as this. I'm going to put in PSD, Adobe RGB, (8-bit). So that's the first recipe that I'm actually going to make. I'm now going to make another recipe. I'm going to click on a new recipe. I'm going to name this one. This is going to be a JPEG. So I'm going to type in JPEG. I'm going to do sRGB, 8-bit. Well, it'd have to be 8-bit because all JPEGs are 8-bit. But nonetheless, that's fine. Click on it to make sure that we are editing this guy. And so in this guy, again, I'm going to do another subfolder here in the location. I'm going to call this JPEG, sRGB, 8-bit. Again, the 8-bit's redundant, but nonetheless. And then I'm going to come down here in the format. I'm going to click on the drop-down menu. I'm going to do JPEG. I'm going to leave it as 8-bit. In the ICC profile, I'm going to change this to sRGB. And then you can also do the compression. The quality part here would be at 100. So if you wanted it to compress more, you know, down to 60, 80, whatever, you would put that also in the name up in here. Keep going down in here, and I'm going to say, okay, this part's great. And so now that I've got a check mark next to both of these, I'm going to select all of these files. So I'm going to go back to all of these, Command A to select everyone, all of my thumbnails. And I'm going to come down, and what I'm saying now is that I want to do 2 copies of this file. I want a Photoshop file in 8-bit RGB, and also a JPEG in sRGB here. And then simply click on, with all of these selected, click on Export, and this is what I'm saying. You can now see the entire thing has come up in your queue. If you scroll to the very bottom of your queue, you can stop this. So come all the way down. You can hit stop. Start shooting again, shooting, and then come back in here and hit start again, and it will go ahead and finish this. And so you can see it's working your way through. It's going to tell you how long this is actually going to take to get done. So we're going 2 out of 19 variants, about 2 minutes left, whatever. I'm going to hit stop because I'm bored and you guys want to go home, and we're all worrying if there's snow outside. But this is the trick. This is the trick. Go to your library right now. Hover over your output folder, hold down your control key, click on this and say, show me this in the Finder. And in your Finder, you will see you have 2 folders, one that's holding your Photoshop files and one that's holding your JPEGs. Guys, if you've got to batch process and do big stuff in multiple formats, there is no fucking program in the world better than this. All right, I'm going to show you one last thing to gild the lily because we got 10 minutes. With everything still here selected, come up to your File menu and come down and do Export Web Contact Sheet. A window will actually open it up and it'll say, well, what do you want to call this thing? I'm just going to leave it. It put in for me Verser Job 331. I have no idea where that came from, but sure. It's going to leave the copyright part here. I'm going to do the images with the name on all of this. I am going to do the theme on mine is going to be full screen dark. And you'll see what full screen dark is I've got little thumbnails that run along the bottom. You only have 4 different possible options here. Full screen light is you get the same thing with a lighter background. Then you can do classic dark, which is just the thumbnails, or you can do classic light. I'm going to go back to full screen dark, and I'm going to say export. And it's going to go through all of this. It actually just put this out on my desktop. It just built a full website for me out on my desktop. So if you go out on your desktop to take a look, it's this thing right here called Contact Sheet. If you open it up, it's got an index exactly the way, if you got anybody in here does any web work, whatever, this is exactly the structure for a website. It is actually then opened up. This is now in Chrome. So this is now in my browser. And I can double click on any thumbnail and it actually brings this up. I can click on that guy and that guy, that guy, whatever. If you have a server that allows you to host websites, you just put this up onto your website and send a link to your client and they can go through this and look at it just like that. And that's how long it took you to build it. Guys, this is sick. Yes.
Where did you go get the export website?
Say what?
Where did you go get the export website?
So up to the in Capture One, File menu. Sorry, that's not Capture One. File menu, down to Export Web Contact Sheet. So this was designed exactly for this purpose. It was designed to be able to send a client an extremely fast, I mean, this is all JPEGs that have been developed and exported for this, but an extremely fast version of it with all the links to give them thumbnails that will then open up and let them thumb through this stuff. You also, the way I remember this, I think you also get navigation bars on both sides of this. Yeah. You get the, the right arrow, the left arrow that you can navigate like this. I mean, this is all built in.
But they can only see the pictures, right? They cannot make any selections or.
They can't do anything with that. There are other ways of doing that. There's now a really robust sharing that happens in Capture One that would allow them to essentially log in and view what's going on in your real capture session in real time. This is not that. Questions about any of this? Did you guys have any questions about when you came out of the whole certificate process? Any questions about Capture One at all? Because guys, this is it for Capture One. We are leaving it now. You have everything that you really need to know. So if you're going to ask questions, now would be the time. Liam.
What was the very last thing when it was describing just like splitting up exporting through like folders? It was like 2 different folders. It was,
That's what we just did.
yeah, no, but it was like there was that first part, and then it was like cross-reference tokens. It was like when you have multiple different, yeah, it was like a cross-referencing between multiple different locations but multiple different tags and tokens that were where those locations are.
Is it this whole part in Capture One?
It was at the very, very end.
Yeah. No, if you go into the export dialog box, it's this thing that's sitting up at the very top. This export cross recipe tokens.
Yeah.
Is it this guy right here? I don't use these, so I really have no idea, but I'm happy to look at it.
That's fine. It was mostly like written instead of video format, so it was just like a very that's one step further than I would use.
Right. So other than that, any other questions about this? All right, guys, that's it. Oh, wait, really quickly, I have no idea what the homework is for next week. Oh, how nice is this? Read stuff and watch the videos. By the way, there's a lot of what you'll see. If you're really into getting into color, it's pretty much a rehash of what I just showed you, but it's still worth looking at, only because this guy's like the guru of them all. This guy right here is David. I don't remember what David's last name is, but he's like he works for Capture One. So he's a really good resource to go to for anything that there is Capture One. Oh, and also this one right here. This is actually an old digital tech of mine, Luke Schneider. He does a really, I think, he calls it a simple workflow guide. He does a really tricked out workspace that is worth taking a look at. It involves a much larger monitor. You can't do his workspace on a laptop, but if you've got a big monitor to work with, he does this really beautiful layout that you should actually look through. It's worth the price of admission. And I'll see you guys next week.
Should we really about